Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Katz is not present, Director Linney,
Here.
Director Patterson is not present, Director Young,
Here.
President McIntosh.
Here. And Director Patterson is excused. I don't have any cards for public comment. Oh. Is there anyone online, Risha?
No.
Okay. All right, come on up, Yvette.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's just general.
All right.
Thank you. Welcome, Director Chan. I did provide other documents to the rest of the board earlier this morning, and I will bring the rest for Director Chan, and I'm not sure if Director Katz will be here today. But one of the things I started off with this morning is asking the Board of Directors to address the harassment and retaliation that I was exposed to this morning by Ed Betancourt. This morning, he accused me of undermining him, and in the district's discipline policy, undermining a supervisor is either considered significant misconduct or gross misconduct. And I've come to this board time and time again to ask that the district put a stop to it, and the message hasn't been clear enough to Mr. Betancourt. And again, I've talked about how I provided this board of directors Mr. Betancourt's employment applications that he submitted to the district, and the gentleman obviously needs supervisor training. And I don't know, I'll once again address this matter through a tort complaint, but I'd appreciate it if the board took action instead of just co-signing on all of this retaliation. I also provided Director Chan what the other members received, which is the EERP. It's the current EERP. And I told the board, the rest of the directors, that HR and General Counsel's office has been giving the directors and even the HR managers that come in misinformation. They've been lying to them by telling them that we don't have a current EERP. The last section of the EERP talks about separability or severability. And it clearly states that the EERP is valid, even if portions of it aren't valid. And the unions use that document when they file PERB complaints, because PERB requires that complaints contain the agency's local laws. So I just want to reiterate that employees have individual rights outside of the union. And all of these conversations about stay interviews are a waste of money, because everyone has the right. It's 14th Amendment right, First Amendment right, local law right, and Myers-Miller's Brown rights to speak to the employer about the terms and conditions of employment without union intervention. That's all I have. Oh, let me just finish by saying that at this morning's planning meeting, I brought up the Pierce Bland update because I received the notification on PACER that the district filed a motion to oppose the amount of money the attorneys for the Pierce Bland case are asking. And it was the first time I read something from the district that didn't spell out how Pierce and Bland didn't have any basis for their lawsuit. Instead, the district is asking for a reduction. So that was that was great to look at. Thank you, I yield.
Thank you. If there are no further public comment speakers, The board will now convene to Conference Room 8 to discuss closed session agenda item number 1 and is scheduled to return here for the regular meeting at 1:15. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. We will receive reports from this morning's Planning and Ledge HR committees under item 11. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director Lenny,
Here.
Director Patterson,
Here.
Director Young,
Here.
President McIntosh.
Here, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next, we have an award, the American Society of Civil Engineers Region 9 Award. Clifford, our general manager, will announce this item.
Yes, thank you, President McIntosh. The Outstanding Water Project of the Year Award recognizes projects in California where the primary purpose is the supply, storage, and conveyance of potable and/or recycled water, and which demonstrate innovation and improvements to the state of practice for water supply and delivery projects. The San Pablo Clearwell and Rate Control Station Replacement Project replaced a 100-year-old open-cut reservoir with 2 large state-of-the-art buried concrete tanks within the same footprint to improve seismic reliability and operational flexibility of the distribution system. The project also replaced the San Pablo Rate Control Station, which supplies drinking water reservoirs from the Wildcat Aqueduct. These facilities, along with North, Central, and Dunsmuir reservoirs, serve nearly 1 million customers. Staff from many departments contributed to the success of this project. Some are present today to represent all those that contributed to the success of the project. I'm just going to name the names. We have Tom Bullock, Associate Civil Engineer, Paresh Gandhi, Assistant Electrical Engineer, Sana Garcia, Associate Civil Engineer, Jin Lin, Assistant Engineer, Jenny McGregor, Senior Civil Engineer, Youssef Nuri, Associate Civil Engineer, Kevin Smith, Maintenance Superintendent, Jamie Sweet, Assistant Engineer, and Carl Tingwald, Senior Civil Engineer. And Director Katz has the award to present since the facility is within his ward.
Thank you. As a board member representing Kensington, and we present you this award that came from the American Society of Civil Engineers. Thank you for your excellence and design.
Engineer this group together here.
Can you go behind Sana?
Director Patterson, Director McIntosh.
All right, that moves us to announcements from closed session. We know how to clear a room, huh? The board met in closed session this morning to consider a request by the general counsel to authorize initiation of litigation. All directors were present at the closed session, including Director Patterson. All directors present voted to authorize the general counsel to initiate litigation in one matter. The action, the parties, and other particulars will be disclosed upon inquiry once the actions are formally commenced. There are no other items from closed session. That moves us on to public comment. Madam Secretary, are there any members of the public for general public comment?
There are no hands online. You have one card at your place.
And this says it's for agenda item number 14.
I need to check off that, the top box for public comment.
Is this
Yes,
you?
yes.
Okay, all right. Yvette, so it's not agenda item 14?
It's both.
Okay.
So I know that the
It's
agenda item
general-
14 will come up at 4:30 PM today,
All right,
so I'll be online for that.
okay,
public comment
gotcha.
session.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I just provided you a couple of documents. One is the 2015 federal lawsuit that I filed. It's in booklet form, and I highlighted number 4, Monell-related claims, and it's of particular importance to me because throughout this document that I filed in 2015, I talk about how the Board of Directors, East Bay MUD, the unions, basically interfered with my right to individual representation. And all of the events that happened during the course of those years. As the district knows and as the Board of Directors knows, I filed 2 tort complaints, and I got rejection letters in around October 26th. So that gives me 6 months. That means within the next couple of weeks, I got my EEOC complaint, right to sue letter. So within the next couple of weeks, I'll be repeating history, it looks like, based upon the rejection letters that I got from the district. And I just wanted to remind the district that this isn't just about me, obviously, because you've had a nice round of lawsuits since I filed in 2015. Now, the other document is about the classification study that I went through with Juan Valencia. I haven't gotten a response yet from Cindy Sharon about whether or not Adam Smyer's email from Friday is true, that the grounds foreman job description was finalized. There's so many issues that Juan Valencia and I had with it, but of course, our feedback, it seems, wasn't even taken into consideration when a finalized version was issued by Adam Smyer, and I provided those 2 emails that show Adam Smyer, show his email, and I believe Juan Valencia's objection. But most importantly, the 3rd page is our objections, which have not been given any kind of weight. I bring this up because I provided everybody the employer-employee relations policy, and I actually gave it to another employee when I was walking in today because she didn't even know it existed. I really think it's important that this board stop disregarding the fact that employees at the district have individual rights. And if you're endorsed by the unions, if you defer to the unions, if you defer to Ms. Sharon, who hasn't been here that long, but I know she was recommended, or she had a letter of reference or a document that gave her reference from Andrea Gordine. Now, Andrea Gordine, I know, was an HR director here at East Bay MUD in the 90s. Stop giving deference to Cindy Sharon based upon any belief that she knows what she's doing, because history is showing otherwise. Thank you, I yield.
Okay. I think it incumbent upon me to just address that, Yvette. And that's certainly in your opinion. And you don't have to come back and address this, but it's your opinion. But it's not everyone's opinion.
It is my opinion in my 3-second statement.
Yes, so thank you for that. All right?
Thank you.
All right, so are there any other public commenters,
No further public comment?
either online or in person?
No.
All right, then that moves us to the consent calendar to consider items 1 through 8. Are there any comments from the public on consent calendar items 1 through 8? Hearing, seeing none. Let's go on to the consent calendar. Any questions, comments?
I'm sorry, I do have one, and I'm sorry, I don't have the item number with me, but it's just a quick question about the contract that we're enacting with Hayward Water. And I was just wondering basically why the payment for the contract is disproportionately high for us.
Mike, you want to talk about the agreement?
That is for item number 4.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want to do it now, or would you like to vote on the other items first?
Let's just do it now. Maybe we can lump them all together.
So that contract is related to the groundwater sustainability plan for the East Bay Plain groundwater basin.
Right.
And the way that East Bay Mud and Hayward have split up cost is in proportion to the amount of area that they overlie. So East Bay Mud overlies a larger percentage of the East Bay Plain than Hayward.
Okay,
And therefore, we pay a higher percentage.
got it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Move the item.
Are you moving items 1 through 8?
Oh,
The entire consent calendar?
oh.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Vice President Patterson, and a second by Director Lenny for the entire consent calendar, items 1 through 8. If there's no further discussion or questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Moving on, so at the last retirement board meeting, the retirement board requested that information on potential changes to the East Bay Mud Retirement System ordinance be discussed and options considered for changes to the ordinance by the board. We have Lourdes Matthew here, Assistant General Counsel, to lead that discussion.
Good afternoon, board members. So I'm here to present on some options to amend the retirement ordinance with respect to pension benefits just for appointed or elected members of the board of directors. As you are aware, a recent case highlighted the potential windfall a board member with reciprocity could receive and the unfunded liability that the retirement system in the district could incur as a result of that windfall. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide you with information regarding these options, as well as to seek guidance from you regarding which direction you would like to go with these options. But first, some background. If you may or may not be aware, but the retirement system was established and the retirement ordinance was adopted and enacted in 1937. For 50 years, since the adoption, the members of the board of directors were excluded from participating in the retirement system. But in 1986, the state legislature amended the Municipal Utility District Act, or the MUD Act, to expressly allow districts to allow board members to participate in the retirement system and be conferred a pension benefit. The following year, in 1987, the district amended the retirement ordinance to allow its board members to participate in the retirement system and receive pension benefits on the same basis as full-time employees. And please feel free to stop me anytime with any questions. The designation of board members as full-time employees allowed board members to accrue 1 year's worth of service for every year they serve on the board. So for example, if a board member has served 5 four-year terms as a district board member, that board member has 20 years of service under the retirement ordinance. Years of service is important, and it's a key component of calculating retirement benefits. Of course, the other components are highest terminal compensation earned by a member, and a multiplier. So for those who joined the system prior to PEPRA, that multiplier is 2.6. And for those who joined on or after January 1st, 2013, this is the Pepper tier. The multiplier depends on the years of service, and it ranges from 1% to 2.5%. Because of the limitations in the MUD Act, in the MUD Act on board compensation, board members typically do not earn a huge terminal compensation. In fact, the current, as I understand, the current rate, monthly rate for board members is $1,606.5. But board members, as members of the retirement system, are entitled to the full suite of benefits that the pension system offers. One of those benefits includes reciprocity. So if a board member is eligible for reciprocal benefits, then a board member could receive a pension from the district based on a higher compensation rate earned from any other reciprocal public agency. So for example, if a board member works for a reciprocal agency prior to becoming a board member, or even after they serve on the board, and they earn an annual salary of $100,000, their pension from the district would be based on that compensation of $100,000. And this presents a potential windfall for the board member with reciprocity, because this was not the salary that the district paid for. And this windfall, benefits the member, but then also results in an unfunded liability for the district. The district didn't pay that compensation, did not derive any contributions from the member, did not make contributions towards a normal cost, and it resulted in unfunded liability to the district, which usually is defrayed by the district. So the MUD Act confers on the board very broad discretion to determine the eligibility for pension benefits and the amount of pension benefits. So to prevent this windfall, it is strictly within your discretion to amend the retirement ordinance or not. So I set forth in the memorandum, you really have three options that is for your consideration. First is you can make no changes if that is what you wish. Second, you could revert back to pre-1987 and exclude board members from membership in the retirement system, which means the only compensation the board members would be entitled to would be the compensation provided for in the MUD Act. They would not be entitled to retirement benefits. Third, you could amend the retirement ordinance to minimize the windfall. And the component that would allow you to minimize the windfall would be the rate that a board member can accrue service. Is everyone with me so far?
The last part, I think I may not understood.
Yeah, I kind of caught that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Somehow,
Yes.
one of the cars fell off the back of the train as you were going along. And sensed it was okay.
And I fully expect that because I get into my own head with this stuff. Okay, so one of the areas that you can control the amount of pension that a board member can get is service, because as I said earlier, a pension has three components when you calculate it. One is service. The other
What do you mean by service? I think that's where I'm getting hung up.
Sure. So it's the amount. It's the amount of time that you work at the district, that you serve on the board.
So it's the number of years.
It's the number of years. Yes.
Okay.
But it's not that simple under pension law, and so service means something under pension law. Service really is the amount of time the pension system considers you have worked for the district, and that counts towards your pension, because you can work in other capacities at the district for which you are not a member. And though you may have worked for the district, let's say the retirement ordinance specifically excludes part-time employees from being members, or temporary employees. Though you may have worked 6 months for the district and you serve the district for 6 months, that legally is not service that can be counted towards your pension. Everyone with me? So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this third option, and this is the first one I'll actually kind of go into more depth about in terms of describing. This third option allows you to amend the retirement system to help minimize the windfall by controlling the rate that a member of the board of directors accrues service. So as I said earlier, currently, board members accrue service every year that they serve on the board on the same basis as full-time employees. But one thing you can do, and that's available to you, is that you can prorate that service. So when you prorate that service, and the example that I provided in the memo was a prorated amount of 25% of full-time. So that means rather than you serve on the board for 1 year, rather than receiving credit for 1 year, if it is prorated at a rate of 25%, for 1 year, you earn service credit of 3 months, such that it will take you 4 years to earn service credit for 1 full year. Okay? And again, this is, this is a way to maybe mitigate, the windfall, but also, to reflect, okay, service based on anything less than full-time can be prorated in this matter. Are there any questions or comments at this point?
Would we be able to have that approach only apply to the allocation of service credit for the purposes of the pension benefit, but not for other facets such as vesting, which is a 5-year period, or for
get to that.
the health insurance benefit?
Yeah, so vesting, so I'll answer your question right now. Vesting, you're vested when you enter the retirement system. However, whether you are allowed to remain in the retirement system or not depends on how the amount of time you have rendered continuous employment, different from service, because continuous employment doesn't necessarily affect your pension. Continuous employment affects whether or not you are able to remain in the pension system. So to illustrate, under our retirement ordinance, there is a requirement that you render continuous employment for 5 years in order to remain in the retirement system. So if I start work in 2020 and I leave in 2024, I don't have 5 years of continuous service, and I must withdraw my contributions and I cannot remain in the retirement system. However, if I leave at 10 years, I can leave my contributions in the retirement system with the expectation that I will get a pension benefit based on those 10 years. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Clarifying question, is that state law or is that something that's EBMUD policy?
It is under our retirement ordinance, and under state law. So there are different retirement systems. There are county retirement systems. Of course, there are systems under PERS or the contract with PERS, and then there are independent systems like us, City and County of San Francisco, and they have their own rules about vesting, and they have their own rules kind of with respect to service and what service counts. So that is. What I'm speaking about is uniquely
Us.
us. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, so with this option to accrue service, and one question you might be wondering is, why don't we change, compensation? And this is going to get tricky really fast, but the reason you don't want to change, you cannot change compensation actually, is because of the laws of reciprocity. One of the key components of reciprocity is that if you work for one reciprocal agency and move on to another reciprocal agency, one of the promised benefits under that scheme is that you are entitled to the highest compensation of either one. And that is essentially a vested right. And if we try to impair that, there could be some legal issues in addressing the compensation piece of it. So that's why we can't really do much with compensation. And that's why service might be the area where, if you want to prevent this windfall, potential windfall, because not, it's a very rare occurrence, or it could be a rare occurrence, that's what you would change in the retirement ordinance.
If I can follow up on that, I'm not sure if you're addressing the issue that I might be interested in having weighed, but I observed that there's a government code 20039.
20039, okay.
And what that government code provides is that the final compensation, and this is concerning not necessarily only the CalPERS system, but any system in state service, specifically concerning city council or county board of supervisors. It is interesting that the statute leaves out all special districts, all school board, many of which do not have systems, independent systems like we do. But it basically says that the final compensation shall be based on the highest average annual compensation earnable by the member during the period of state service in each elective or appointed office. And that has been interpreted and held to mean that a member who gets a retirement benefit due to elected service has a separate formula completely. And it never will mix with another type of final compensation formula. So two formulas apply to that person when they retire. It's another approach that seemed to address the windfall issue. And I'm wondering, would we be able to adopt that under the MUD Act, or would we need a change in state law to affect that?
Well, first I'll need to look at the statute very carefully and make sure, that isn't just the CalPERS statute, and double check that. But I don't know the answer to that because I haven't looked at the statute and I don't want to give you advice on the fly.
I'm not specifically, obviously that statute doesn't apply to us, but the concept, would we be able to modify the way final compensation works in our retirement ordinance, or would we be breaching our reciprocity agreement without,
To me, it's the reciprocity and the concept that reciprocity could be a vested right for certain people, and that we would have, the concept of reciprocity is that is the thing about reciprocity, is you apply that big compensation, your highest compensation, to all of your employment. So I do wonder how that would affect a person's vested rights if that could be changed.
It seems like it's intended to separate elected officials from the benefit of reciprocity for their elected service. That's to me, that's specifically what it's referenced to. I suspect it might require amending the MUD Act, which I don't know how, our legislative people aren't here, but.
That makes the most sense, Marguerite, what you're saying.
No, well, that's what as it says in the item, this was, I've been wanting to explore this for quite some time, but the timing was not appropriate to do so. And I actually wish I'd done it much sooner, because we're on the brink of some changes in the board, and I think this is a good time to consider it. And I really, if I had my druthers, what I'd do is I'd just exclude reciprocity from elected board members, and that would be the simplest way to do it. And this statute sounds like it's exactly what it does, is it voids reciprocity for elected officials. And, separates out, you can stack your pensions, basically.
right, there still is reciprocity in terms of if you move to another agency on day one, you still are vested in the.
Yeah, you can still have
in the system.
reciprocity for other things, but
Right,
just
but for
not.
final compensation, you don't get the windfall of final compensation.
Right.
Well, I'll certainly take a look at that and follow up.
Yeah, if it's something that doesn't require changing the MUD Act to do it, seems like it would be.
Yeah, I would imagine it would involve reflecting our hypothetically amended retirement ordinance in future reciprocity agreements, but that the contract that exists today would be binding up to that date of adoption. That would be kind of a expectation, but yeah, I'd be interested in the review for what steps would need to be taken with or without the legislature to implement that concept.
You have quite a bit more in your presentation, correct?
But I, actually, not really.
Not that much.
Not that much, yeah. I tried to be succinct.
Okay, why don't we
And thorough.
let you finish with your presentation and then,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we're talking about this concept of amending the retirement ordinance to change the accrual of service. That's certainly an option. And it doesn't have to be 25%, it could be 50%. And that's something you all would need to decide if this is the route that you want to go. Just a note, this option would likely require, administrative changes to how we operate the system. It would need, we need to come up with, different calculations and instruct our upcoming retirement system program to calculate service differently for board members. But there's just 7 of you, so it should be okay. One point I really need to make, though, before I move on, is that this change would not apply to you. This change would apply only to board members after this amendment is enacted. It would not apply to any board member, former board member who earned rights under the retirement system prior to the enactment of this ordinance change. Okay, so that's option 2. Are there any questions, any other questions about option 2? Okay. So then I want to go back to option 1, or second option actually, and that is excluding board members from participation in the retirement system. Like I said, it's been done before. It was the case up until the MUD Act was amended to allow board members to participate. And it probably would have the least administrative impact. And like I said before, it would only apply to members moving forward, future members, not current members. But it does, this whole exercise has raised yet a different issue. In addition to the windfall, this exercise in evaluating, well, what happens to, what do we do about board members who come back to district service? It really highlighted a conundrum. And the conundrum is for district retirees who may want to serve on the board of directors. Under PEPRA, a retiree who retires from a retirement system, but who is later, let's say, elected and appointed, and that retiree as a board member is eligible and to participate in that retirement system from which they retired, PEPRA requires that for that retiree to serve on the board, they would have to stop their pension payments and rejoin the retirement system. If they have reciprocity, under CalPERS regulations, reciprocity is eliminated by returning into the retirement system. So it has major consequences for board members who are retirees of the district to come back to the board and serve the district in that capacity. They need to stop their retirement and they need to stop receiving pensions under PEPRA, and they need to reinstate. And that's a problem we have now, whether or not you do anything to amend the retirement ordinance with respect to board members.
And that's true, though, only for PEPRA members.
Nope.
No,
It is
it's true for any
retiree.
so if somebody retires from, as a whatever it's called, legacy, if they come back, they're then covered by PEPRA.
Right.
And so they have to abandon any other retirement from East Bay MUD that they may have.
Yeah, so this isn't about whether or not,
It's sort of separate, it's really
separate from this, but it is a problem that was highlighted and just something for you to consider. But certain aspects of PEPRA apply to all public retirement systems.
So the only option that would fix that problem would be if retirement benefits wouldn't even fix it
They were
then.
excluded from the retirement system.
Oh, okay, so that would
That would fix the problem.
that would fix that problem. But there's no other fix for that problem.
There's no other fix for that problem unless they are willing to reinstate and suspend their pension payments.
As a PEPRA member, which would,
As any member. This does not apply only to
no,
employees.
no. If they come back, they have to give up, they can't get pension payments anymore.
No, and they have to rejoin the retirement system. They have to reinstate
Right.
in the retirement system. And so so their payments stop and they accrue service anew.
Right. So that's true now.
It's true now, yeah, it's true now.
And it's true even, I mean, if we made this change, it's also true. Doesn't change it. It just actually even reduces
Reduces,
the amount overall.
right, the rate they accrue service would be affected.
But you do have, within your memo, you do have proposed language that could address that particular issue.
Yes, so fortunately, you could just exclude retirees who are elected or appointed to the board from participating in the retirement system.
So again, the two separate issues, so consider this issue number 2, and if you want to tackle this one right now, there's proposed language that Lourdes has that we can modify the retirement ordinance so that employees who retire from the district and get elected to the East Bay EBMUD Board do not have to be reinstated into the retirement system and lose their benefits. And we have some language that's proposed that, if the board agrees to something like this, then we can bring back some proposed changes to the retirement ordinance. The separate issue is the first issue that Lourdes talked about, which is how do you want to look at the compensation? So, maybe we could take the second issue first, as far as is the board interested in modifying the retirement ordinance so that East Bay EBMUD people who retire from East Bay EBMUD that subsequently get elected to the board do not have to be reinstated into the retirement system.
I actually would like to take the first issue first, because it is an issue I think that there's been a lot more discussion about, a lot, I think is weighing more heavy on people's minds. So I do see it as separate issues, just like Clifford and Marguerite, but I would like to tackle the first issue, which is the compensation, the retirement credits for serving board members.
And I would, I also would I'd like to separate the two issues. They could be considered concurrently, but I'd like to separate them as separate. They're both amendments to the retirement ordinance, et cetera, but I would like to have them be considered separately, and maybe one will end up moving on a faster track and one will not be on the faster track. The government code section that Andy raises is, running that down to see if that is something, because that would take care of the board member spiking issue in all cases, actually. It would take care of it if somebody was an East Bay EBMUD employee who didn't complete retirement service and then served for 20-something years and then retired and got their old East Bay EBMUD salary instead of their board of directors salary for their pension compensation. So that would, creating a separate, elected official, calculation it would handle my concerns about undue pension compensation for elected service. But it might be, if we're talking about changing the MUD Act, we're bringing in a whole pool of other people, and it seems maybe not a third rail, but it doesn't seem fast. And I think I am interested in having this done as soon as possible, because we, in all likelihood, are going to see some changes on the board, and it would be good for anybody that's considering running for any openings to know what the deal is.
And the earliest, the soonest any amendment can be made whatever amendment that is, would be July 1st, because of the first reading, second reading, the publication requirements, and the 30-day waiting period.
And is that if we make
So that's why July 1st is.
a decision this evening?
Yes, if you make a decision this evening.
All right.
And I just want, I'm saying this because July 1st isn't like a hard and fast deadline. It is just the soonest. So we have time to consider, other options, especially under Government Code 20039, if it's viable.
Doug, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yes, I just want to get straight one more time. So as it is right now, if a board member were to establish reciprocity from a previous job or a future job, and say earn $150,000 a year, the time that they spent here as a board member, say it was 25 years or so, that would count towards that pension service at a year-to-year basis. But the money that would be contributed to the retirement fund while they were a board member would just be
Based on the compensation they receive.
right,
as
which
a
is right
board
now
member.
about $19,000 a year.
Right.
And that's what you call the unfunded liability, basically taking money from the retirement system that they didn't contribute to.
Correct.
Well, that's outrageous. And so, option one, no change, doesn't seem like even a real option. So we really have two options here. Because that would be terrible.
April?
Yeah. So Lourdes, when you did this presentation for the retirement board, you said that your department had actually surveyed some other agencies to see basically what their practice is, and so I'm wondering what the result of that is.
Sure, yeah. Our wonderful paralegal did a survey, contacted numerous public agencies, posted a questionnaire on, some public forums. And here's what we found. So first of all, we didn't get a whole lot of responses. But we did get some. And I can tell you in the Bay Area, here are public agencies that allow elected and appointed officials to participate in the pension, in the retirement system. City of Oakland, City of Alameda, Walnut Creek, Albany, Hayward, and Contra Costa Water District. And there are also agencies that excluded board members from membership, and those are Alameda County Water District, Castro Valley, City of Orinda, Lafayette, and Dublin San Ramon Services District.
Castro Valley what?
City of Castro Valley?
City of Castro Valley?
Castro Valley isn't a city.
It's not a city.
Oh, sorry. That was one of the,
I mean, I have to say, I did my own survey, where I just called up people and asked them, and it does seem like what we're offering is pretty extraordinary. I mean, I would say that it's out of the norm. You're looking at me like you don't understand what I mean. So like, in terms of the full credit being given for the pension system for board members that are working part-time. That's what I mean.
yeah.
Is that clear?
Yeah, we did ask that question, whether anyone provided, offered benefits based on kind of like this model on a partial service type of scheme, and we found that none did.
Right, okay.
Right, so, so you serve 3 terms, which, I know is not the case for the majority of people on the board right now. But I think going forward, it's probably more likely than not that people are not going to spend half of their life serving on the EBMUD Board as a director. I don't know if that's fair or not to say. Maybe not. 20 years, 25 years. But, so at 12 years, we're talking of current, retirement it's about $4,500 a year for a 12 years of service, just that. And, you can double it and et cetera as for PEPRA folks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's even more limited for Pepper.
Yeah, so it's not, and we'd be reducing it to 1,000 a year, or 1,000 and change a year if we were to do the 25%. roughly.
Depending, yeah,
Well, it'd be a quarter of what it is, a quarter of what it is now.
right. I
Right.
mean, yes, quickly, yes, but, they're all different variables, especially for PEPRA. You have different formulas that could apply to you based on your years of service. You're going to have a different multiplier. So it isn't just 25% off.
Well, no, if
But
we
it would make a
reduced it,
significant, it would reduce it significantly, yes.
I mean, basically, I'm with Doug, is that it just isn't right, right? That could happen, and has happened. And
Which portion? Margaret?
getting paid, based on, compensation that is 10 times, or, however many times greater than your board service compensation, and having those years added, multiplied on. So if you do, 10 years and then, in a CalPERS agency, and then 20 years as a board member, that's 30 years at whatever your, CalPERS agency's salary was. And if it was 100, just to make things simple, if it was $100,000 and you were at, 2.5%, you're looking at an $85,000 pension versus, so that, when you only got paid, 19,000 a year, in salary, most people do not make more in pension than they did in salary. So,
Agree, that's not right.
yeah, so I mean, Andy's, if we could effectuate Andy's solution, if we could amend our retirement ordinance to follow Government Code 20, and that was not prohibited by the MUD Act, that would seem to me to be the preferable. Leave our calculation of service years and all of that alone, but have the formula be calculated.
And I'll tell you now, I
Separately.
suspect that probably applies only to,
No, I know the state code does only apply to those, but does the MUD Act prohibit, I mean, if the MUD Act just says board members can get a pension, is there anything that precludes?
I mean, there's nothing in the,
I really need to look at this
So-
section.
I mean, maybe just, President McIntosh, if I could just kind of guide this along, just, because there's some research that Lourdes will need to do. But what I'm hearing the board say is status quo is not something of interest. I'm not hearing anybody bring up the issue of eliminate the benefit, so we'll just take those two off the table. What I hear is some change of reduced benefit, and the preference is if there's something that, as Director Katz has suggested, if we could modify the retirement ordinance without having to modify the MUD Act, that would be the preference, and Lourdes will have to do research. If that isn't viable, then the other option you're asking us to propose language, and we do have some proposed language in the packet, is some reduced benefit. So we could do that research and bring it back. I just don't, I mean, I think Lourdes is going to have to do some research to figure this out, but at least we've eliminated keep it the way it is and eliminate the benefit altogether. Those two are off the table. We're
I
going to.
haven't said that I was against. Yeah, I didn't say, I just said eliminate option one, but
Yes.
I have not, I don't have a strong opinion whether to eliminate it completely or not. I mean,
I have a strong opinion against eliminating healthcare, the healthcare benefit. So.
The
that's my
HIB.
opinion. Yeah.
HIB.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, but so if there's interest in the board to also consider let's eliminate the retirement, the pension altogether, we can leave that on the table too, because we added it, we didn't have to, we can take it off.
I like the 25%, but, if that becomes somehow impossible to do, or, I think better than having the option that we have now would be to eliminate it entirely, but.
I think there's proposed language that it can be
Yeah.
done. There are some administrative issues we have to work through, but we can modify the retirement ordinance to achieve that goal. It's what Director Katz is asking about is a slightly different version of can we do that?
My preference is to, look at Government Code Section 20039 as a drafting model for amending the retirement ordinance. And if it's feasible and will accomplish the sense of the board, then I think that is the cleanest way to accomplish this goal. And while there's some kind of roughness to just designating a 25% accrual, I think that there's reasons why that seems very inexact to me in terms of the appropriateness of the benefit, but it is, I think, an appropriate fallback if that first option is not available. So I would prefer that modeling Government Code 20039 within the retirement ordinance as option number one, and then would support the 25% approach as a fallback option number two if that's not workable.
Does that work with the board as far as researching that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we will look in to see if we can amend the retirement ordinance, something similar for the purpose of calculating highest compensation, something similar to 2039, and bring that back. And there's also issue 2 that I'd like to remind the board about. Would you like us to also include, because I think our next step is a first reading, would you also like us to include language addressing the retiree board member issue?
Yes, but separate the two.
Okay.
So that we can act on one
Yeah.
but not the other,
Yes.
if we so choose.
So we can do that. So,
Definitely.
Concurrent,
We
but
need to hear
separate.
that, yes.
yeah, but as far as the second issue, which is, the retiree coming back to the board, am I hearing any concerns about the proposed language and making those changes?
To exclude them from the retirement
exclude them
system in
from
order
being
to allow
reinstated.
them to keep their pension?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm in favor. That's fine. Let's just have them go forward separately, but
Okay, so we,
The next step with respect to that second issue would be a first reading of the
Yes.
amendment
Yes.
to the retirement ordinance. Okay.
and then,
I'm sorry, just process-wise, we would bring the retirement ordinance back with proposed amendments for a first reading. For the first reading, you can vote separately on each proposed amendment, and then for the second reading, we would only keep in the language that you have voted on. And so that would be a way to separate the process. Otherwise, we'd have to kind of take 2 steps. We'd have 2 first readings, 2 second readings, et cetera, so.
yeah, so what I'm hearing is we're going to bring proposed language. If we can accomplish what Director Katz talked about, we'll bring proposed language to modify the ordinance. And that way, if we can't, we're going to bring it to do some reduced amount. But we'll have 2 separate items. So, okay. Maybe a third issue that Director Chan brought up that I just want to make sure we address is the HIB. And the way the HIB is currently calculated, as described in the memo, that's based on your service.
Right.
And so if you get, say, a quarter, then 8 years would still only get you 4 years of service, which wouldn't vest you to HIB. And the only way around that, and I don't know if it's possible, is the vesting for HIB is based on years on the board.
continuous service.
Continuous service on the board, yes.
And that would require an amendment to change vesting, to provide the board with a different vesting, because for everyone else, it is years of service. So if you go with option 2, we would need to carve out an exception for board members to accrue at a different rate than all the other
And
members.
Lourdes, that brings me to something I've been thinking during this entire presentation. I'm not on the retirement board. I don't listen, generally speaking, to retirement board meetings. What I would prefer to see when this comes back is some sort of chart or matrix that this is the issue, that this is what's going on now, this is the issue, and these are the options. Sometimes I need to be spoken to like a kindergartner. And I want to fully understand what I'm voting on and not just follow.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah. And what would help me is what is it that you need help with understanding?
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything, all three issues.
Okay.
Yeah, we can put that together, a chart showing status quo, what the ordinance currently says,
Exactly.
and what the proposed options
But for
are.
each one,
Exactly.
Yes,
Yes, separate for each one.
yes.
yeah, and you didn't really talk about the HIB element of this in the,
The HIB is the third issue, right?
Well, that's another issue.
Well, it's
That's
a fourth
that's not
issue,
pension
actually.
benefit. It's, it's a health benefit.
Right, and we did, so that was discussed in the retirement
Okay.
board meeting. That's why I made the remark I did.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment that Director Chen has raised. So it would seem unnecessary if the first option proceeds, because that option only modifies how final compensation is calculated. But if we're modifying the way years of service is credited, then I would agree with having a different type of treatment for the HIB.
Just to keep in mind, the retirement system is like a Jenga puzzle. So if you're going to move one thing, we have to look at
Something else, yeah.
things and make sure we don't undo
It's a chain
any
reaction.
other aspects of the retirement, of the pension.
Right, yeah, I think the 5 years of service, or five years of service on the board in actual years, not modified years, for the vesting period, I think would be in order to,
For HIB.
right.
yeah, but HIB doesn't, well, it staggered, so you don't get the full reimbursement amount until you have 20 years of service. So it's not just counting the 5 years continuous service, it would be counting
Yeah, and
all, each year as a year, each calendar year as a year.
I mean,
service
the
year.
way it's currently structured, for a board member, if we did a reduced 25%, I mean, the absurdity of it, if you want to put it, you'd have to be on the board for 80 years to get the full, the full 100% of the HIB. So I think we have clarity as far as what you're looking for us to come back, President McIntosh, as far as, a table showing here's the issues and here's how we're going to resolve it. And then we'll be prepared to come with the first reading with these as separate issues so the board can vote on them separately.
Yes.
are there any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that is it for determination discussion. The only other item I have is the water supply update. And Dave Briggs is here, our Director of Operations Maintenance, to provide his last water supply update for the year.
Thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, President McIntosh, members of the board, and Risha, what should I do? Wait for you. Yeah, so we have the final late April water supply deficiency report. This will be the last water supply update. And statistically, we're almost out of the rainy season at this point, so a lot of the numbers that I'm about to give you here,
Except it keeps raining.
I'll get to that. Okay. So yes, as Director Young just mentioned, beautiful day today, but we're expecting a few tenths, possibly depending on which forecast you look at. They're downgrading it the last couple days. They were bullish a couple days ago, but the last couple ones I've seen have kind of downgraded it. But so we might see a little more precip throughout the rest of April. But right now, looking at our water production, still very, very low. We're at about 120 MGD on average of water production right now. In the summer, we're closer to 180, 185. So we're right at that precipice where things are going to jump up about 50%, and so that creates a lot of operational adjustments for us. So we'll see. It's beautiful right now. I know a lot of people in the service area are probably reaching for their irrigation controllers today, possibly. It's going to get cold no matter what. I don't know how much precip we're going to get, but it's going to get very cold. It's probably going to be in the upper 70s in Walnut Creek today, but over the weekend it might be in the 50s. So
Supposed to rain over the weekend.
and it might rain. So we're going to be in this little back and forth, but as soon as spring and Mother Nature are done with us, we'll take off here and start producing a lot more water. But still statistically very low. We're, as you can see, between comparing the red and the green, we're about just, pretty much on top of last year, 10% below a few years ago and way below the numbers from almost 20 years ago.
Remind me, Dave, the 2005, 2007 period, that was just kind of a normal water
Yeah.
period?
Yeah, it wasn't a drought.
Yeah.
The last time things were normal. Yes. Okay, so locally, this is through April 3rd. We did pick up about 3/4 towards the end of last week. So April is showing 0 here, but we got about halfway through an average April already locally. So this number is 75, 76% of average right now. We may get another few tenths here throughout the rest of April. But otherwise, this has been consistently slightly below average. And then up country, better. We're probably in the upper 90s at this point if we include the precip we got at the end of last week and moving forward, but still looking really good there. The snow, again, this is at 8,000 feet. This is not the entire watershed. This is just the upper elevation of the watershed. So this is the one metric that has been consistently above average for quite some time. Depth and water content looking good. And then statewide, hard to see those numbers, but Northern Sierra is 123% on average. Central Sierra, where we are, 107. So that's close to our watershed-wide average for water content. That's above average. We're expecting, so average runoff for the McElmy watershed is 740,000 acre feet. We're probably going to get slightly less than that. The Department of Water Resources just finished their April 1st snow survey and published the data, so their numbers are close to our forecast. So we're expecting about an average for watershed runoff of the McElmy Basin. And average is fine for us. Average will be just fine, especially with the preceding year being so wet. So as you'll see shortly, and as you've been hearing for many, many weeks now, we'll likely fill the system, or will fill the system at this point. I can be a little more definitive about that. And here it is. So we are just at the start of April. We are out of the flood season at this point, more or less. So storage is going to start coming up as the snow melts. We'll probably fill the system, almost or nearly fill the system, close to 740,000 acre feet or so, 750,000 acre feet around July 1st. We'll begin making releases as we prepare for the next water year, and we will enter next year full. So, good news. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Yay.
Thank you, David.
So just considering our watershed being full, so when would be the earliest if let's just say next year is a dry year, then would we be looking at possible restrictions in 2026?
So, yeah, I think it's hard to be absolutely definitive about this because you can never say never. But, right, we will go into next year full. If we have a devastatingly dry year next year, and of course, we're not always masters of our own future because the state will dictate statewide conservation levels, and sometimes even if our watershed is okay, we have to march to that drummer in Sacramento. It's highly unlikely that we will be in a shortage condition in the summer of '25. I would say highly unlikely.
Okay.
And summer of '26 is fantasy land at this point. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Dave. And then at your places is a monthly report. And with that, that's the end of the reports.
All right. We will now move to reports and director comments. Are there any comments from the public on these items? No? No. Okay. That moves us to committee reports. The minutes from the March 26, 2024 Finance Administration Committee meeting were included in your agenda materials. We will now receive an update from this morning's Planning and Ledge HR Resources Committee meetings. Marguerite for planning.
Yep. Okay, we had 3 items. We had a report on our pretreatment and pollution prevention efforts at the wastewater treatment plants, which is both what we do to make sure that our, especially industrial customers are not discharging pollutants into their wastewater system, and then pollution prevention, which is sort of similar, but more about about controlling things at the source and includes our residential customers as well. Talked about PFAS as an item of continuing concern, and highlighted that we have been in compliance across both of those areas. The second item was about the Los Vaqueros Reservoir expansion project and an update on that, which for the first time we received, and would encourage board members who are not on the planning committee to look at the presentation and staff report on this. Revealed quite high costs for water from Los Vaqueros, and the potential of supply alternatives such as the DREAM project for meeting the needs that we had that we've been thinking LV would provide. So as we come to our decision in September about whether to be part of the project, these are things that we need to consider. And then we also heard the watershed and recreation report, both for our local watershed as well as up in the McCollum, and focused on both user appreciation of our watershed resources for recreation, and also the fuel management work that we're doing, especially locally. That's it on planning.
Okay, thank you, Marguerite. When it comes to our Ledge HR committee, there were 2 items on the agenda. Number 1, maximizing employee retention and engagement through state interviews. And then the second was diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan update. We ran out of time for item number 2 for our DEI strategic plan update. So we did not receive that presentation, but we moved it to our next meeting. The first item on the agenda was maximizing employee retention and engagement through state interviews. And it's a new innovative pilot program on how to track our new employees and their satisfaction with the district, and how to retain them at the district instead of having them move on. And that was very interesting, and appreciate the presentation by Cindy Sharon, Director of Human Resources. So that's my report on Ledge HR. That moves us, other items for future consideration. Please submit items for future consideration to the general manager. And item 13, director comments. Thank you if you've already submitted your written comments to the secretary. Are there any verbal director comments or reports?
I do.
Marguerite?
3 things. 1, happy birthday, Andy Katz. 2, several of us were able to attend a dinner last weekend? No, weekend before last, that honored Bill Patterson, and it was delightful at Scott's, and recognized April and Doug and I attended, as well as,
Yeah, April
Clifford.
covered that last meeting.
oh, did I miss that?
And Bill talked about it
And Bill
as well.
talked about it as well.
Oh, right, you're right, I'm sorry, gosh, I'm sorry,
It
Baby
bears
brain.
mentioning twice.
Baby, it does bear mentioning twice. But then the other thing I got to do, and Director Chan was there as well, was visit the opening class of our Community Water Academy, which I have to say is a pretty darn impressive group of people, from all parts of the district, from people that work for cities and agencies that we work with, to NGOs, to teachers, to I mean, it's just a really diverse, not so diverse racially, but diverse backgrounds and experience and age. And I'm guessing that they will keep our staff on their toes throughout the next few weeks. But it was really, it was great to see. It was like 31 people out of 250 applicants. So it was very, anyway, that was great. So those are my comments.
Any other comments? All right, we will now adjourn the regular business meeting and will reconvene at 4 PM to continue the regular business meeting, to conduct public interviews and adopt a resolution to appoint a candidate to serve as the director representing EBMUD Ward 2 until the general election on November 5th, 2024. All right, see everyone later. Welcome to the continuation of the Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 regular business meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. The Board of Directors will conduct public interviews and adopt a resolution to appoint a candidate to serve as the director representing East Bay Mud Ward 2 until the general election on November 5th, 2024, under Agenda Item 14. I, President Lisa McIntosh, I'm participating remotely. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Katz,
Present?
Director Lenny,
Here?
Director Patterson,
Present.
Director Young,
Here.
President McIntosh.
Here. We will now move to determination and discussion under item 14. I will now turn the meeting over to Director Andy Katz to conduct the remainder of the meeting in person. Thank you.
Thank you, President McIntosh. The board will conduct public interviews with the following 5 candidates: Kurt Arends, James Cervantes, Bill Clarkson, Luz Gómez, and Mariah Lauritzen. The ad hoc committee appointed by the Board of Directors recommended all 5 applicants be interviewed and considered for appointment. The candidates received the evaluation criteria and interview questions last week. The order of the interviews was based on a random selection and is as follows: first, Luz Gómez; second, Bill Clarkson; third, Mariah Lauritzen; 4, Kurt Arends; and 5, James Cervantes. Each interview will be 15 minutes. The allotted time does not include potential follow-up questions. Members of the public may provide comments on Agenda Item 14 after all interviews are completed. The board will deliberate after all public comment has been received and consider appointing one of the candidates to serve as the director representing Ward 2 until the general election on November 5th, 2024. If the board determines more time is needed for deliberation, the board will vote to confirm whether we should hold a special board meeting on April 16th at a time to be determined and consider that appointment at that meeting or during the regularly scheduled board meeting on April 23rd. Does the board have any questions before we receive the first candidate?
Do we have questions that we're supposed to ask? Yeah. Okay.
But do we have an order?
Yes, the board will ask questions in alphabetical order. First question will be from Director Chan. Second question will be from myself. Third question will be Director Linney. Fourth question will be asked by Director McIntosh. The fifth question by Director Patterson, and the sixth by Director Young. Does anybody need me to repeat the order that board members are asking questions? It's alphabetical order. Okay. All right.
We are waiting, so I have just sent a message for the first candidate to come in.
hear me all right?
Welcome,
everything
Luz
working?
Gómez.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your interest in serving on the EBMUD Board of Directors representing Ward 2. You will have 15 minutes for your interview, including your opening and closing remarks. Each board member will ask an interview question. Your allotted time does not include potential follow-up questions. If you have additional letters of support or recommendations, please provide those to the secretary. Do you have any questions before we get started?
I have one additional letter, so I will
Take that. Thank you. Thank you.
Then the secretary will start a timer and let you know when to begin your opening remarks.
So the timer will show up on the screen. It's kind of small, but it'll show up on the screen, and I will start it now. So there it is. And when you're ready, want to go ahead and get started? Director Katz?
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with all of you this afternoon. So good afternoon, President McIntosh. I know you are joining us remotely. I see you, honorable board members, staff, and community. I am Luz Gómez, and as a longtime public health professional, equity advocate, water conservationist, and environmental steward, it's an honor to be considered to serve on EBMUD's Board of Directors, an agency that I have admired since my family's arrival in Ward 2 over 40 years ago. We immigrated from Colombia, where we boiled drinking water and water interruptions were commonplace. Needless to say, we kind of fell in love with EBMUD water from the first sip. The agency's commitment to public health and the environment resonates deeply with my personal values and professional background in health, air quality, and environmental protection. Serving our community has been my life's work, and at this critical time in history, I hope my approach and experience will be an asset for EBMUD as it enters its second century. If appointed, I look forward to collaborating with each of you and to continue to provide water management excellence for our region.
Thank you very much. Director Chan, please begin with question 1.
Okay. Describe your experience dealing with local issues affecting Ward 2 and the East Bay. Who were some of the people that you worked with on these issues?
Thank you. So throughout my career, I have had the privilege of working with some incredible individuals, from like Miss Margaret in West Oakland to the late Henry Clark in North Richmond to Mark Desaulniers and so many others, but also with so many organizations that work tirelessly to make a difference in the East Bay. In my career, I was the lead poisoning prevention manager for a while, and I worked with the State Department of Public Health, environmental health specialists, community groups, local television to prevent childhood lead poisoning. In various public health roles, I worked with Kaiser, John Muir Health, Contra Costa Health, as well as elected officials, local jurisdictions, school districts, childcare providers to identify prevention strategies and educate residents. At the Air District, I launched the Tri-Valley Stakeholder Group and collaborated with Interfaith Climate Action Network, the Building Trades Council, 350 Bay Area, Communities for a Better Environment, the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, Sierra Club, and so many others in our region. I also had the opportunity to collaborate with some of our main regional agencies, including MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, BCDC, CCTA, MCE, and many others. As the Building Healthy Communities Program Manager, I implemented the Safe Routes to School program in multiple school districts. I was a member of the Lafayette Vision Zero Stakeholder Group and worked closely with County Public Works and Planning on the county's Vision Zero efforts to reduce traffic fatalities. I also led the Health Department's comment process on the County General Plan update. As District Coordinator and Chief of Staff for County Supervisor John Joya, I worked with every county department, regional agencies, and elected officials at all levels of government to address the most pressing issues in our community. As chair right now of the county's Sustainability Commission, I work with labor, business, environmental advocacy groups, education, research, and environmental justice organizations to implement the county's climate action plan.
Thank you. what key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience in any of these areas: infrastructure investment, long-term planning, financial sustainability, including affordability and rates, water supply, including water conservation and recycling, drinking water quality, workforce development and planning, or climate change and environmental protection. So what key issues facing EBMUD most interest you?
To be honest, I'm interested in all of these issues, and I have experience in most of them. And it's hard to condense into 2 minutes, but I'll do my best to share with you a little bit of that experience. So for infrastructure investment, I worked with Public Works in District 1 to update and implement capital improvement plans. And in public health, we partnered with the Watershed Project, the Resource Conservation District, and Public Works to build a watershed connection pedestrian amenity in North Richmond. For long-term planning, I have worked on 7 long-range planning documents for local government agencies, such as specific plans, general plans, Vision Zero plans, climate action plans, and bicycle and pedestrian plans for Lafayette, Concord, Pittsburgh, Richmond, and the county. With regards to financial stability, I managed a $1.2 million budget at the Air District, and I have managed multiple state and federal grants throughout my career. I have also followed closely the latest CPUC utility rate proceedings and understand the complexity of rate setting and the multiple competing priorities at play. With regards to workforce development and planning, I worked with the county's Workforce Development Board, with high school trades pathways, and I did outreach to community colleges in equity priority communities to promote various career paths. Currently, as chair of the county's Sustainability Commission, I have experience addressing climate change and promoting environmental protection. As the second largest landowner in the East Bay, EBMUD has a unique opportunity to lead with regards to environmental stewardship and protection. We need to be thinking about resilience, but we also need to be thinking about doing all we can to mitigate climate change.
Doug, Director Linney.
All right, what do you see as the role of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors, including working with internal and external parties of interest?
Well, I have to say I've been impressed by this board and the work that you guys have done, and I believe that the role of a board of directors such as this, the most critical one, besides hiring an excellent general manager, would be setting strategic direction and policies for East Bay Mud. Equally important would be ensuring that the organization operates effectively and efficiently to fulfill its mission. Not only does the board approve budgets and rates, but it also ensures fiscal responsibility to ratepayers. It provides oversight and tracks compliance with all relevant laws, regulations, and permits governing water and wastewater utilities. Directors bring the voice and interest of customers and constituents to the table. You guys are out there bringing those voices right here. So it's not only for each ward, but also for the entire service area. I believe engaging with the community to gather feedback, respond to concerns, and communicate initiatives and accomplishments is also an important role of each of our board members. East Bay Mud would not be what it is without its most important resource, and that, besides water, of course, and that would be its employees. Directors collaborate with internal stakeholders, such as staff and unions, to ensure effective communication and alignment with the board's vision and goals. The board also works to ensure that the district is meeting the needs of our most vulnerable communities, and that staff reflect the community that they serve.
All right, am I up next?
Yes, Director McIntosh.
Hi, Luz, it's good to see you.
To see you too, thank you.
So what do you see as the most significant challenges facing East Bay Mud? And how would you approach these challenges as a board member?
Thank you. This is such a key question. So as I see it, some of the key challenges facing the district would be aging infrastructure, climate change, affordability, natural disasters, emerging regulations, and of course, water supply and drought management. I will try to address 4 of these in my reply. With regards to aging infrastructure, we know that some of East Bay MUD's 4,200 miles of pipeline are over 100 years old, and roughly 20 of those miles actually fail each year. So I would prioritize replacement of the highest risk miles first and gradually accelerate replacement. I would advocate for smart technologies to identify the weakest pipes and prioritize engaging the public so they can support and come along with us in this investment, because it's going to be quite costly. With regards to climate change, it is here, and adaptation will be critical to maintain reliability. I applaud the district's carbon neutrality goal by 2030, and as a board member, I would strongly support this direction. I would also want to explore natural carbon sequestration on East Bay MUD lands. For natural disasters, I believe strengthening facilities to withstand earthquakes, landslides, wildfires, and power outages is a top priority to protect public health and safety. I would multiply emergency preparedness education, especially in low English proficiency communities or LEP communities, and of course in our most vulnerable communities first. With regards to affordability, the district's consumer assistance program is a wonderful way to help low-income households afford water, but we need to improve access to this very incredible resource. I would be a voice for making sure that those who are least able to afford rate increases are least impacted by such increases. For customers who have not transitioned to drought-tolerant landscapes, I would advocate for continued and increased incentives to do so. For emerging regulations, it's something that I think we're all going to have to be aware of. We're likely to see regulations limiting forever chemicals and microplastics, as well as changes around recycled water and perhaps direct potable reuse. As a board member, I would prioritize East Bay MUD's legislative outreach to stay on top of what's being proposed, as well as active participation in key industry organizations that can advocate for workable regulations, workable being the operable word. I think that's it for that one.
Yes, Luz, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Director Patterson.
Would you please describe your views on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion? I think efforts in the workplace and in broader community of East Bay MUD served. How would you promote DEI for East Bay MUD, given our status in this community?
Thank you for that question, Director Patterson. This is something very close to my heart. I believe that embracing diversity is critical, not only in the workplace, but in the broader community. In my experience, when an organization or community prioritizes DEI, we see multiple benefits. We see more innovation and creativity because people feel open to be themselves. An inclusive workplace leads to more employee engagement and satisfaction, feeling that they can bring their authentic selves to work. When an organization reflects the diversity of the community that it serves, the community feels represented and seen. Through DEI practices, we can build trust with the communities that we serve. To promote DEI at East Bay MUD, I would work with fellow board members to ensure that there's leadership commitment to it. I would like the board to lead by example, publicly committing to DEI efforts, advocating for diversity, fostering an inclusive culture, and holding ourselves accountable for promoting equity and inclusion.
Great, I get the last question. At times, board members may disagree with staff recommendations or with each other on how to address issues raised by the union or by the public. How would you deal with those situations?
It's such a great question, right? And this is something that those of us in positions of leadership always have to be mindful of. So I have been told that I'm a good listener and that I bring a calm demeanor to my interactions with others. A key ingredient in situations where there is disagreement is to ensure that people feel heard and understood, and that their concerns are acknowledged. It's amazing how these simple practices, listening, being calm, and acknowledging, can transform disagreements and lead to mutual understanding and respect. As a member of this board, I would bring these and other communication and interpersonal tools that I have learned throughout my life to best serve the community. Ultimately, we need to remember that as public servants, we are here because the communities we serve have entrusted us with the privilege of serving them. Grounding our decisions with this in mind can help build consensus and avoid disagreements.
Thank you. You may use, we had originally planned a 1 minute for closing remarks, but I will allow for candidates to use the balance of the 15 minutes remaining for any closing remarks.
And I have about 3, is that right? Okay,
Right there, it's on the
Hey.
screen. Can you see it?
I can see it.
Got
Yes,
it.
Thank you. So my remark is about a minute, I think, if I timed it right, so, but I'll see if I can expand a little bit more on anything that I may have like skimped on a little bit earlier, but I really want to take this opportunity to thank former Director John Coleman for his 3 decades of service on the East Bay MUD Board. He represented the district and Ward 2 very well, and his legacy is one of the reasons I am here before you today. I would not want to serve on just any board of directors. I truly admire the district. In researching more about East Bay MUD, I was impressed by the breadth and depth of its work and the dedication of its employees and this board. Now that I am participating in the Community Water Academy, I can't wait to learn even more. If appointed, I would look forward to serving on DERWA and to continue the excellent recycled water program already in place. I am a passionate person who truly cares about our community, and it would be an honor to serve by your side to collaborate on tackling the challenges ahead. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you tonight, and thank you for your service in managing one of our most precious resources. So thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here, such an incredible opportunity. It truly would be an amazing, amazing thing to be able to serve with you. I respect each of you so very much, and the more I learn about East Bay MUD, the more impressed that I am. So I hope you will see my candidacy favorably and stick around to find out. So I think that I'll leave a minute behind. I'll save a little minute for someone else. So thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
That minute is saved for the board. Thank you, Ms. Gómez, for your participation. You are welcome to remain in the boardroom, or staff can escort you to the training room.
Okay, thank you so much.
I can ask, yeah, I will ask now if there is follow-up. I think we had not built that into our formal order of events. But yeah, are there any follow-up questions?
I was trying to figure out when the follow-up questions were gonna happen, but.
I think we did build that in, and I think Director Young and I agreed on one clarifying question. I am not going to ask any right now, but I think that was our agreement as ad hoc committee.
Okay.
One amongst all of us or one each if?
It was one each, only clarification though.
Yeah, okay. Good to get clarification on that.
A short answer.
So, yeah, just so that we're treating all candidates fairly, does anybody have any clarifying questions that they would like to ask Ms. Gómez? All right. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're getting ready to get candidate number 2.
And board members, feel free to just jump in with your question after the preceding director.
I think we just have to get used to the order.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You can, I will trade with you, you can go first.
No, I like the last question now.
Now you were complaining before.
No, I just complained about being last.
So we should be ranking in between interviews.
Yeah, although there's only one way you can rank the first person.
Yeah, we've recommended for
obviously.
ourselves to use a forced ranking matrix.
Okay.
And that may be helpful for our decision-making process.
But that's just for our purposes at this point.
Yeah, those are internal, that's an individual director decision. Welcome, Bill. Welcome, Bill Clarkson, and thank you for your interest in serving on the EBMUD Board of Directors representing Ward 2. You will have 15 minutes for your interview, including your opening and closing remarks. Each board member will ask an interview question. Your allotted time does not include potential follow-up questions that may occur for a clarifying purpose. If you have any additional letters of support or recommendation, please provide those to the secretary. We have received the transmittal from yesterday. Do you have any questions before we get started?
Nope.
Okay, then the secretary will start a timer and let you know when to begin your opening remarks.
So the timer will show up on the screen. It's a little small circle, but it's viewable. And we'll start now.
Thank you. I've lived in San Ramon for 46 years. I spent all my adult life there, but I was raised in Oakland, went to school there. I have a master's degree in business. I was recognized as the Business Person of the Year, both by the Chambers of San Ramon and the Chambers of Contra Costa County. I've served in public office for the last 21 years, and many more years after that in terms of commissions and committees. I first got involved in public policy back in the 1990s when 2 school bonds failed in San Ramon, and they asked me as a business person to get involved. We worked very hard and were able to pass the next bond with 76% of the vote. They asked me to run for the school board. I was elected 3 times serving there. When my term was over on the school board, I was asked to run for mayor, and I've served 4 terms as the city of San Ramon as the mayor, twice running for re-election with no opposition, which I'm sure you guys could all appreciate. San Ramon is a majority-minority city. 30% of our residents were born outside of the U.S. 25% of the homes, English is not is the second language. I raise all that because as mayor, I started a Culture in the Community event, which brought together a broad spectrum of ethnic and religious groups. And that event, by the way, has now become a showcase and is a yearly event in San Ramon. And then 2 years before 2020, in 2018, I started and reached out and created a diversity group in San Ramon because, again, San Ramon is very much an ethnic city. I brought leaders from all elements together. There were 45 of us. Developed to a great group. My purpose, first and foremost, is that you get to know each other first as people and develop relationships, because I find that when you know each other's story and you know and you care about people, and when things got tough, we worked really well as a group. In 2010, by the way, I was asked to form a new Rotary Club. Where's the timer, by the way? 13 seconds. Asked to form a new Rotary Club in the Doherty Valley. And it's where most of the ethnic leaders live. I was over a period of 6 months, put together a Rotary Club with 75 members, largest chartered club ever to have in Rotary's memory. And from that group has been a whole variety of community leaders, Andy Lee and Michelle Lee, Sabina Shafar, Shredar, Kay Wang, just name a few, all came out of that Rotary Club. So my time is over.
So when you finish with your comments, I'll
did.
stop the timer. You're at 12 minutes and 30
I understand
seconds.
how it works now, thank you.
Got it.
I'm used to ours where there would be a,
You have
the
3
minutes
minutes and you're
count down,
out.
it would turn red at 10 seconds, so my apologies.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 6 questions for you, so, and then please retain some time for your closing remarks.
Thank you, that's very helpful to know, thank you.
Director Chen.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Clarkson, for being here. I'll give you the first question. Describe your experience dealing with local issues affecting Ward 2 and the East Bay. Who were some of the people or groups that you worked on with these issues?
As I mentioned, I've been the mayor in San Ramon for 4 terms, 9 years, because we added a year. Perhaps one of the challenges was the state is forcing us to build more homes in our communities, as you know.
I think the importance of leadership is the ability of having a good working theory of how things are going to be changing in the future. I work very hard with our local business park, Bishop Ranch, to think through how we could move the housing to the business core, save the outside areas. And through that process, we're able to approve City Walk. It's going to have commercial, it's going to have residential housing, around 7,000 units, but it protects our open spaces and it protects our existing neighborhoods. As a Rotarian, I talked about how I started the new Rotary Club. And I thought the important thing about that was most Rotary clubs are traditional, older business people. The Rotary Club we founded is young, very diverse, majority women. And I think it's something, a reflection of the fact that I've made diversity a very important aspect of what I was trying to do when I was mayor.
Thank you.
What key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience in any of these areas? Infrastructure development, infrastructure investment, long-term planning, financial sustainability, including affordability and rates, water supply, including water conservation and recycling, drinking water quality, workforce development and planning, or climate change and environmental protection. So what key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience?
Wonderful. I have two that I have strong interest in, which is when I served in the school board, they didn't pick me because I was an educational leader. I was solicited because I had financial oversight and strategic thinking, especially around infrastructure. And that was really the role I played when I was on the school board. Same thing as mayor. I always kept a sharp eye on the financial line. And one of the other challenges we had in San Ramon was we had to build a city hall. And we entered into a partnership with Bishop Ranch where they built us a new city hall at no cost to the taxpayers by us going into an agreement to sell them some land. The bottom line was we got a new city hall, no debt for the homeowners, no debt for the taxpayers. The other areas that I have special interest in is both disaster preparedness. I served for 10 years on our local disaster preparedness board, and I served as its president. It's something which I'm very concerned about because I think when there is a natural disaster, that for our area, it won't be as bad, but most of our first responders are going to be going elsewhere. And so we made sure that we were prepared to handle the absence of our first responders as they helped other people. And the other one is sustainability, especially around the issue of climate change, that there are going to be challenges or people perhaps challenging our great water. You guys have the best. I've lived and had East Bay Mud all my life. It's the best water in the world. Others may want to have ideas of getting their hands on it. I think one of the things that you're going to want to think about is enhancing the partnership with DERWA, there in San Ramon, but also perhaps with Central Sands, to start looking at ways we can perhaps promote more recycled water, bring it into our system. In San Ramon, we repiped almost all of our parks, and I was on the park commission as I was mayor. We repiped them, and it's all recycled water. And we cut our consumption by 30% because we repiped it. One of the little things to learn, by the way, is that redwood trees do not do well with recycled water. And so we had to make sure that we had good fresh water for our redwood trees because they did not do well. But you'll learn those lessons along the way.
All right. So what would you view as the role of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors, including working with internal and external parties of interest?
I think the first response to your question is I think a good finger feel for the role of the governance board. I've served 12 years as trustee at the school district, served 9 years at the city of San Ramon. I understand well the role of oversight and not to micromanage the staff. Staff does a great job. Give them good direction, let them do their job. I'm currently sitting on the governance board for our local hospital. Again, I got appointed to be now in charge of strategic planning for the hospital as we're going through some challenging times trying to bring up the maintenance of the building. The bottom line is I have a good reputation in the area and been called upon by different groups to do that kind of stuff. I also am called upon by our local organizations and boards to teach board governance to a lot of these groups. The other part, and I think one of the most important parts, is the role of board members to each other. One of the things that I stressed, both as mayor and I was on the school board, is getting to know my fellow board members well, understand and what was important to them, try to find out ways how I could be supportive of the things that were important to them. We may not agree on everything, but if they knew that I understood what was important, and I would work hard to find ways to accommodate and help them succeed, it made the board work well. Boards, it's important that we battle on issues at times, but when the meeting's over, we go out and we have caring relationships because we care about each other as people, even though we battle in the boardroom, and that's really important. I think relationships with the bargaining units, we have to be very careful. You want to understand what's important to your bargaining units. I think it's important that you have relationships with them, but you cannot talk about bargaining, obviously, because of the labor law rules around that. But I think the bargaining units want to know that you understand what's important to them and that you respect what's important to them and that you honor that in the process. The external roles is one I think I've played a good role. I'll talk about it some more with outside parties. One of the most important things we do as board members in terms of governance is our outreach to the public and the way that we both communicate what we're doing and why we're doing things. And you don't do it just by having comments you make at public meetings. You need to be out in the neighborhoods. You need to be talking to people, whether it's at Pete's Coffee or you have town hall meetings. You have relationships with all the different agencies. I think one of the strong suits I think I have is that I know my letters of recommendation perhaps reflect that. Everybody in the San Ramon Valley who's a political leader, elected leaders, different organs, they've all written me letters of recommendation. I have good relationships with all of them because I've spent the last 25 years working very intensely in our neighborhoods and in our neighborhoods.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Clarkson. What do you see as the most significant challenges facing East Bay MUD, and how would you approach these challenges as a board member?
I think the biggest challenge we may have is the long-term protection of our water sources. I think there'll be people, you've got, as I mentioned, great water. I think there are going to be people who are going to want to, as the years go forward, perhaps create challenges for it. So I think being very protective of our water sources and making sure that we don't do anything that puts them at risk. The second is that we enter both our current partnership with Durwa for recycled water and perhaps with Central Sands to create additional recycled water, because we need to have every arrow we can put in our quiver, because there's going to be a drought again. I've been through them since the 70s right through to now, and there are going to be droughts. And everything we can do to create good, clean water for our residents, we should be doing that. Good times right now is a good time for us to enter in those partnerships, get that stuff going. I think that the area of managing our communications and our community outreach is one of the strongest important things we do to help prevent later on problems. An ounce of prevention today, working with people, creating trust in neighborhoods, trust with your customers. And when time gets tough, and if they trust you, you're able to work through problems. That was probably the most important thing I would do at mayor. What I did when I was on the school board is, and that's one of the reasons why they asked me to be involved in the school board, because the business community trusted me. And I had to be very careful never to say things that were not true. I would try to always, and one of my ground rules, be an honest broker of information. If you got bad news to share, you got to share the bad news, but be an honest broker of information. And as long as we play our role of getting good information out and making sure that community supports what we're doing, when times get tough, we can rely upon that, and it gives us what we need sometimes to solve a problem. One of the things I want to share with you is that when I was mayor, COVID hit. And I used to have monthly mayor breakfasts. Only have 30, 40, 50 people show up at Clementine's restaurant. Once COVID hit, I rotated, did a weekly podcast on Zoom and on YouTube. Had well over 1,000 people watching our podcast. I brought in Dr. Joseph from UCSF almost every week, and we were able to give good information from the county supervisor and from our own staff and from Dr. Joseph what was going on, and was able to bring, I think, a lot of peace and bring a lot of understanding of what was going on with COVID, and it was very, very helpful. And I think that was one of the ways that I felt best as my year came to an end being mayor was having that program, and people were very complimentary of the fact that we spent a lot of time outreaching to them and keeping them informed of what was going on.
Bill, my question for you is to look into your ability to describe your views on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. Those efforts in the workplace and in the broader community East Bay MUD serves. How would you promote DEI for East Bay MUD?
One of the best indicators of future action is prior action. When I was mayor, 2018, I put together the diversity committee, or now it's now referred to as the San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition. 45 leaders from all around our community getting together on a twice a month basis to work through issues, but more importantly, we got to know each other as people first and foremost. And so when the tough times came in 2020, San Ramon didn't go through the same problems that other communities did. They cared about each other, we worked together, did solutions. When I was mayor, I also put together what was called Culture in the Community. Again, San Ramon is a very diverse community, and we wanted to showcase everybody's culture. That really took off, and it was so successful, the city came in and said, Bill, it's a good program, we want to do it as a city. I said, great, go do it. There's less work for me to do. The other is that you may have heard of APAPA, which is the Asian Pacific Islander Political Alliance. At the yearly dinner, they brought me in and gave me an award as significant award for recognition for the work I did, helping them all during the years, helping them organize, because I mentor most of them in terms of running for office. I mentor them in terms of how their organization could be more successful. And I took it as a real compliment that they would give me that award. I spoke briefly about how I created the Rotary Club in the Doherty Valley and how diverse that group was and how lots of great leaders have all spun out of that and now hold office in the San Ramon Valley. In fact, if you look at my letters of recommendation from Mitchell and from Andy and from Susanna, Kay, Mitchell, Sridhar, and Dinesh, and David Fong, these are all leaders in our ethnic communities, and they all wrote me letters of recommendation. I think that speaks to the issue itself.
Very good.
Okay, last question.
Oh, good.
At times, board members may disagree with staff recommendations. They may disagree with each other on how to address, issues raised by the union or the public. How would you deal with these situations?
I'm short on time, so I'll be concise. With staff, I try to always give questions in advance in writing to staff. I never ask questions in a public setting that they don't know are coming. I never want to embarrass staff. It's something I would always promise to do. With our unions, it's always making sure that we understand what their points of view are, and you never create unnecessary dissension or controversy, especially in public sessions. With my fellow board members, it is to have a relationship with you where I understand what's important to you and endeavor the best I can to help you be successful too. And I'm going to stop there so I have room for my closing statement, if I might, please. Let me get to the page. I'll give you the word. All right. Thank you for this opportunity. I have a deep background in overseeing and reviewing complex financial reports. I have for the last 21 years. I think I can bring that to this board. I know the importance of creating and maintaining infrastructure, especially in terms of, we put together over $500 million in new construction that I not managed, but oversaw with our public schools. I understand the role of a director very well, the role we're supposed to take, understanding where boundaries are. I'm a strong collaborator. One of the things I did as mayor is I hold, every 3 or 4 months, I do a walk in the city called City Walk, where I bring over 20 different leaders, school board, fire board, council members, county people, and I take them on a tour through the city. They get it, it's the architecture and everything else, but the reality, the secret sauce is they're learning and creating relationships with each other. So when we come back here, we have great partnerships. And I think my time is up. I heard it.
Yes.
And I want to be respectful of the time, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson, for your participation. You are welcome to remain in the boardroom, or staff can escort you to the training.
Thank you very much.
I actually do have one clarifying question.
Please go ahead, Director Chen.
Model it. I will. So I would just see if there's anything else that you would like to add about, you mentioned DERWA, and anything else you would like to add about DERWA. I sit on the DERWA board, and so I'm very interested in that.
Well, when I was involved as mayor, we had a partnership with them because we did, and I may have mentioned this, and I apologize if I haven't already, we entered into an agreement with DERWA and with the Dublin Santa Ramon Service District to take their recycled water and to bring it into our parks. Now, I understand they're looking for a new executive director for that. DERWA has been a very important part of our city, and I hope that it continues to be a priority for this board going forward too, because it is for me.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you for all your courtesies extended to us, candidates. Thank you.
Welcome, Mariah Lauritzen, and thank you for your interest in serving on the EBMUD Board of Directors representing Ward 2. You will have 15 minutes for your interview, including your opening and closing remarks. Each board member will ask an interview question. That's 6 questions, and your allotted time does not include potential follow-up clarifying questions. If you have additional letters of support or recommendation, please provide those to the secretary. And I recommend looking at the clock periodically and leaving some time for your closing remarks.
Okay.
All right, so Director, do you have any questions before we get started?
No, I do not.
Okay, Director Chan.
One moment. Mariah, the timer is going to show up on the screen, small circle in the black box next to Director McIntosh. It's going to count down from 15, and I'll stop it between questions. And so you just watch your time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. And
Okay, I just want to say welcome.
wait, she has to have her opening remarks.
Excuse me.
Sorry,
Excuse
sorry.
me. Please begin your opening remarks.
And the timer is starting now. There you go.
So I am Mariah Lauritzen, and I appreciate you taking the time to interview me for the Ward 2 position. I would be honored to be able to serve in that position. I have 4 years of experience as elected representative at Central San, and I am currently serving as president for Central San. And there I have worked as a team to develop strong policy, including during the COVID-19 era, and following through on long-term financial policy, such as fully funding the pension fund and OPEB, and developing new initiatives such as DEI goals and net zero emissions goals. And through it all, I've been consistent on my water policy approach. I believe in a regional approach with collaboration amongst agencies to develop win-win solutions. And EBMUD has built a legacy as a regional leader, and I want to help EBMUD further this legacy.
Thank you. Director Chan.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Mariah, describe your experience dealing with local issues affecting Ward 2 and the East Bay. Who are some of the people or groups you worked with on these issues?
So a lot of the issues I've dealt with in Ward 2 have been as a Central San board member. And for the start of addressing local issues, I think it's always important to have a high standard of service, which Central San is known for. And then for addressing other types of issues, for example, the redistricting that we did, I think it's very important to listen to the public. So for the redistricting, Rossmore asked to be included in the Walnut Creek division, which we listened to and granted. And as a result of that redistricting, another issue associated with that was that San Ramon had no board member in it. And so I have spent time recruiting board potential candidates to run for that seat. For example, giving presentations to the San Ramon Valley Climate Action Group or bringing it up with electeds. And when I did receive interest, I would connect those individuals with resources. I've also supported recycled projects in the Ward 2 area. Both Central San and East Bay Mud have worked together, creating options for satellite treatment facilities at Rossmore, Moraga, and Orinda. As a board member, I think we have a lot of power to improve people's lives, and it's critical that we start with maintaining a high level of service and listening to our constituents.
Thank you. What key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience in any of these areas: infrastructure investment, long-term planning, financial stability, including affordability and rates, water supply, including water conservation and recycling, drinking water quality, workforce development and planning, or climate change and environmental protection. So what key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience.
So as a board member, I think your interests should always first be on the financial side. It's our job to carry out the public's business, and part of that is fulfilling our fiduciary duty with the public and maintaining a sound financial approach. My passion is to facilitate win-win solutions on a regional basis. So that includes things like water, nutrient mitigation, PFAS. So for example, with water, we have the new normal of persistent drought. And to address that, you really need to go all of the above in terms of solutions: new sources of water, conservation, recycled water, increased storage. And as a board member, I have been involved with memorandum of understandings with both East Bay Mud and Contra Costa Water District for water exchange projects and recycled water projects. For nutrient mitigation, those regulations that are coming down are to address a regional issue. And that has the potential to increase recycled water in the Bay Area if there's collaboration between potable and wastewater districts. And as a board member and an engineer, I know what it takes to upgrade facilities to address new regulations like that. And then PFAS, another regulation that's coming down. As a Central San board member, we've looked at having Central San be a regional solution for PFAS destruction, because the PFAS will have to go somewhere after you treat it. And that's an example of looking at an issue that you have as an individual agency and thinking, what do we have that would also benefit the region? So I am for building win-win solutions, and I'm very passionate about water policy. And I want to build a strong team with the East Bay Mud Board to help you achieve your goals on a regional basis.
All right, welcome. What do you view as the role of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors, including working with internal and external parties of interest?
So the role of the board is to represent the interests of the public. And I like to prioritize three stakeholders, and I compare them to a three-legged stool. So there's the board, there's the public, and there's the staff of East Bay Mud. So with the board, you have to maintain effective relationships with your fellow board members, and basically also collaborate together to build effective policy. So that means developing listening skills, being prepared with communication so that you're clear, and also try to create alignment amongst board members. And also, I think this is a portion that sometimes gets missed. Be committed to any policy that the board member passes, even if you are not completely aligned with it. There needs to be alignment, and the board is the one that makes decisions. For the public, the board needs to understand the public's priorities and the needs of the public. And I think this starts with transparency, especially as a water agency. People don't always understand or are informed about water agencies. So making public comments easy, making literature easy to understand, providing things like the Central Sand Academy. I know that East Bay MUD also has its own academy. And then I like to make myself available for conversations. So I attend clubs and meetings. I've given interviews to podcasts and newspapers. And then the third leg of the stool is staff. The staff executes board policy and also provides information for us to deliberate with and make good policy with. So the staff needs support to be successful. This means fully funding initiatives that we pass, providing training and tools that they need to be able to do their job, and competitive compensation. Communications with staff is also critical. So as a Central Sand Board member, I've advocated meeting with labor unions in off seasons from contract negotiations so that we can have candid conversations without the pressure. And that's also part of supporting staff. As a board member, I intend to balance these stakeholders, the board, the public, and staff for the benefit of East Bay MUD.
Thank you. What do you see as the most significant challenge facing East Bay MUD? And how would you approach these challenges as a board member?
So I see the financial needs of the system, the general infrastructure replacement, upcoming regulations with PFAS and nutrient mitigation, and the new normal of recurring drought. And in approaching these, the first thing I would say is cost does matter. So cost for infrastructure, cost for the upgrades to the system, all of these can cause rate fatigue with our customers. And the debt service that we have can constrain what we can do in the future. So when we make plans to address infrastructure and the necessary upgrades, this needs to be taken into account. And then as a board member, your role is to balance these different competing needs. And my approach is in striking that balance is, again, regional collaboration. So people work and play in different agencies and jurisdictions, so it is our best interest to find win-win solutions. And East Bay MUD has a legacy of doing this, as evidenced by multiple JPAs and more. So for PFAS, which it's not just about removal, but where it's disposed, which I referenced earlier, and then nutrient mitigation, you could have similar disposal problems with the solids, or you could go with recycled water as a way to do nutrient mitigation, and that would require collaboration. And then water supply, whether it's built storage or additional effluent, that also requires a regional solution. So East Bay MUD is strategically located in terms of size and location to provide win-win solutions. And a win for East Bay MUD is a win for the public and a win for the region.
Could I please have you describe your views on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, those efforts in the workplace and in the broader community East Bay MUD serves? How would you promote DEI for East Bay MUD?
So I do consider diversity, equity, and inclusion as a core value for myself. And I have the vision that everyone should feel a sense of belonging and have equal opportunity in growing themselves. So I think it's also worth pointing out that's what is good for the individual is also good for the organization. There have been studies that show that diverse groups make better decisions than homogeneous groups. And as a board member, I have promoted the DEI committee at Central San and the establishment of DEI goals. And in my approach, I'm very process-oriented. So I compare DEI initiatives a lot of times with safety culture. And that's partly because an organization like EBMUD or Central San already have a safety culture, and it's also partly because those two concepts can have similar issues, such as how do you communicate about them without feeling like you're calling people out, or how can you go through issues without assigning blame, but finding the core of how you want to perform this scenario, basically. And what's more, just like safety culture, I want safety integrated into every aspect of how we do business. The same should be true for DEI. So as a board member, I also think that we need to set the example for DEI and having processes around DEI. So I've recommended that we have a DEI moment at Central San at the end of board meetings so that we can catch any DEI issues that cropped up during the board meeting. So I'm committed to when it comes to integrating DEI into our everyday lives.
Actually, can I ask a follow-up, a clarifying question now?
Please go ahead.
Model it.
It's about the last question. So this doesn't count on the time, right? Can you clarify what a DEI moment looks like in a board meeting?
So it would be an item on the agenda, and it'd be an opportunity to bring up, if there was something said that someone thought could have been said better, they can bring that up. Or if it could even be a celebration, like we did really good during this time of the meeting of prioritizing DEI. So it's basically a process to help facilitate the culture of DEI, because sometimes you don't feel ready to speak up in the moment, right? So part of that is providing the opportunity in a low-stakes time to speak up so that we can have the conversation.
Thank you. So now with my the last question. At times, board members may disagree with staff recommendations. They may disagree with each other about how to address issues, or they may disagree about issues raised by the union or the public. How would you deal with those situations?
So I like to say that policy is a team sport, and as a team, we all have our role to fulfill. So what I start with is remembering my role. I am a single vote on a deliberation body, sorry. And it's not my role, for example, to tell staff what to do. It's not even my role to tell the general manager what to do, because that's the role of the board. It's not my role as a single board member. And when there's conflict and I need to think it out, a lot of times I ask myself, did I fulfill my role as a representative? Did I provide effective deliberation? Did we come to a compromise that was good policy? And if all that happened, then that was a success, even if it was not completely aligned with my point of view. In terms of working through disagreement, it's important to be respectful and prioritize that. So for example, with the Central San Board, we have a yearly review and how we review, and we basically give ourselves a grade. And that's a good way to talk things out. And then and then I focus on communicating my perspective in a clear way. I check for understanding, but I don't necessarily look for agreement. And I always seek the common ground. If you can find common ground, you can work from there. So we haven't been sent on to a board to win. We've been sent there to serve and provide good policy and to deliberate. So if you remember your role, that helps you go through a lot of conflict without your ego getting in the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other clarifying questions, then that concludes our questions, and then you have the balance of your time for your closing remarks.
All right, thank you. So first, I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to interview me. It's an honor to be here, and it would be an honor to serve on the EBMUD Board. I believe that I do bring strong credentials. I have served on the Central Sand Board, both as a board member and as the president. And I've also had more than a decade's worth of experience in engineering, including in wastewater and in high purification facilities. But more important than that, I think that I bring strong values. So I bring the value of having finances as a cornerstone to safeguard the public's interest. I bring the value of a team approach to policy and building that policy with the entire board, not just trying to push my own perspective. And I want to help EBMUD continue its legacy as a regional organization and help facilitate collaboration to meet the needs of EBMUD. EBMUD is an influencer for how the region solves its problems, and I want to be there to contribute to that. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lauritzen, for your participation. You are welcome to remain in the boardroom, or staff can escort you back to the training room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clarkson.
Welcome, Kurt Arends, and thank you for your interest in serving on the EBMUD Board of Directors representing Ward 2. You will have 15 minutes for your interview, including your opening and closing remarks. Each of the 6 board members will ask an interview question, and your allotted time does not include potential follow-up questions. I recommend reserving a portion of the balance of your time for closing remarks. And if you have additional letters of support or recommendations, please provide those to the secretary. Shortly after you begin, you'll see a timer appearing on the screen.
Thank you.
Please begin your opening remarks.
All right, thank you, good evening. Just want to thank the board for allowing me this opportunity. It's a great honor to be considered for Ward 2. Just quickly about myself, I have about 36 plus years in the water industry. Pretty much dedicated to, a passion. To last that long, you really need to care. So the focus on clean, safe waters, been ingrained in me, and that's been my life's work for the last several decades. A lot of people don't understand, it's very simple to say that, but it takes a lot to deliver water to your communities. I've worked for various agencies in the Bay Area, providing water to those communities, and that's been my passion and my goal for the last several, like I said, decades. So this is an opportunity to continue that, actually rely on my experience and my knowledge and hopefully contribute not only to East Bay MUD, but a community that now, I live in, which is a nice benefit that allows me to contribute even closer to my own community. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chan.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Mr. Arends. Thank you for participating in our process. So first question, describe your experience dealing with local issues affecting Ward 2 and the East Bay. Who were some of the people or groups that you worked on with these issues?
Thank you. Probably a little different than some other candidates. Most of my engagement's been actually in the water industry, the water world. Locally, I've engaged in local proposed developments that affected our local community, more of a grassroots effort, sharing interests, concerns, and expressing those to City Council. To be honest, the majority of my free time in the community is spent with youth sports. So our last several decades as my kids have grown, right? Coaching, being part of the organizations, fundraising. So that's really my engagement background locally has been focused more on giving to the community than really being involved with the political side of it.
Thank you.
What key issues facing EBMUD most interest you? And tell us about your experience in any of these areas: infrastructure investment, long-term planning, financial sustainability, including affordability and rates, water supply, including water conservation and recycling, drinking water quality, workforce development and planning, or climate change and environmental protection. So what key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep this short. Obviously, with 36 years in water industry, the last 17 have actually been at the executive level. So I've really touched all these areas. Been responsible for developing capital improvement programs, implementing capital improvement programs and projects, developing asset management plans, implementing asset management plans. Obviously, developing budgets is always part of that role, which then feeds into rates. I've been involved with, I guess I'd call, on the staff side, the rate analysis as far as impacts and alternatives, right? Developing options for boards to consider as far as, different rate increases, what can be done, what can't be done, what are the impacts of those options. On the staff side, obviously I've managed large ports of organizations, worked on staff development, developed recognition plans, DEI programs, which we'll talk about later, mentored staff, and all the elements of working with staff development and training. Water supply, I've been involved with long-term planning, worked closely with DWR and the State Water Project, the Bureau and the Federal Project. I spent 10 years in the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, working on that, which is now the governor's Delta Fix. Familiar with Los Vaqueros and all the regional and statewide projects. Manage, directly a groundwater basin, a desal facility, brackish desal facility on the water supply side. I think on the environmental side, I've been involved directly with working with regulators, working with NGOs to resolve issues. I was responsible for reservoir operations in the south part of the county, working with agencies on fisheries flows, habitat development, built fish ladders. So I've been very close to kind of all those elements. So I feel my experience really provides a broad basis of experience and hopefully a good foundation to build on here at East Bay MUD. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
And applying. What do you view as the role of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors, including working with internal and external parties of interest?
Thank you for the question. I guess there's maybe three different elements that I recognize as I've worked with boards closely, several different boards in the Bay Area, and really seen how a board can provide very clear direction and policy for the organization, and really make things move efficiently. They also set the tone for an organization. So I think that's a key role as far as leading the organization, kind of setting the tone and expectations. Obviously they set policies and for the goals of the agency, but really I think beyond that, focus, what's important, because that does trickle down to the organization and to the staff. Obviously working with other elected officials, staff only does so much. There's a lot of communication and coordination that goes on with other water agencies, with local, cities, county governments, state legislation, all the way to the federal. So I do, there's a key role in representing the organization, representing the interests, representing the positions of the organization. And then, finally, I guess, is the community element of that. Not only being the conduit for, the community and the source of information, but providing that information back and educating the community. Amazing how people, take water for granted and don't really even know where it comes from or how it gets to their tap, but you just know it's there. I think the more they understand that, the more they understand what it takes to provide that service, and the more they appreciate, what it takes to get that and the cost. I've often heard, rain is free, why do we have to pay for water? Well, I don't think most people realize what it takes to get that water, to their homes, to be sure it's safe and reliable. So I think, another part of that is being able to educate, share that information, have those discussions to help improve, the community's understanding of the service we provide and how important it is and, how difficult it can be or what it takes to provide that service. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you see as the most significant challenges facing East Bay MUD, and how would you approach these challenges as a board member?
I think a challenge that faces all organizations and all utilities is, aging infrastructure, I think is one of the key things. As the district just celebrated its 100th year anniversary, obviously it also means facilities are getting old and near the end of their life. It's an issue today. I guess my concern, why I think it's...
Thank you.
Thank you. And why it's so critical is that is going to grow over time. It's just going to continue to be a bigger and bigger problem. And with that is not only the reliability and the impacts to our ability to provide that service, but the cost, obviously. Everything, whether it's water quality, regulations, environmental regulations, whatever, really comes back as demand on resources and demand on cost. And I've seen, pipeline projects go from $1 million a mile to, I've seen numbers like $10 million a mile. And that's just unsustainable for an agency that, has thousands of miles of pipeline. How do you deal with that? How do you account for that in the financing and yet balance that with affordability? There's got to be a way, I think as a board member, trying to develop a plan, trying to balance those two things and come up with options if you can. I don't have the bullet, unfortunately, because it's something I've struggled with, but looking at more efficient ways to do that work, different materials, looking for ways to try to capitalize on other things. But I see that as one of the major challenges that most organizations are going to face, and I'm sure East Bay MUD is in a similar situation. And all these things relate back to, affordability, the cost of the service we provide, and how to ensure we can continue to provide that at a reasonable rate to customers and those that, have struggled to afford that. So, thank you.
Would you please describe your views on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI efforts in the workplace and in the broader community that East Bay MUD serves? How would you promote DEI for East Bay MUD?
Thank you very much for that. I think it really relates to the community. East Bay MUD has a very diverse base and community that it serves, right? It's diverse ethnically, financially, socially. Just its views and the varying perspectives of the community, right, are challenging. I'm always amazed. East Bay MUD has probably one of the best water sources available, and I'm sure you have customers that don't trust government, don't trust public water systems, and don't want to drink the water. So I think it starts with understanding all the issues and concerns of the community, and you want to bring that into an organization, right? So I think when you talk about, reflecting the community, it's understanding and reflecting those views, those interests, the concerns that they have, the issues that are, pressing in the community, and having people, hopefully internally, that understand that, can communicate with those people, that can, bring up and represent those interests and those concerns. So that's how do you bring those people into the organization? How do you, bring them in? How do you make them feel part of the organization, to bring up different views, bring up different opinions? How do you make them comfortable, feel valued, that what they bring is important? I think people work for public agencies because they want to serve the public. And then provide opportunities for those individuals within the organization. Having been in organizations, it's a challenge, right? You're talking about changing cultures of organizations. And it's a long-term effort, trying to change people's thinkings is not easy. But it's valuable, and I think it's something that needs to be done. The way it's been done for the last 100 years may not be the way it needs to be done going forward. So I think it's important to focus on that. I think the board's role, though, is to continue the emphasis on that and to put priority on that, provide resources. It's like pushing a rock uphill. As soon as you stop, it's going to start rolling back again. And it's an ongoing effort. I mean, I work directly with staff. And DEI itself, the term, has a reaction to many people. But I think the underlying goals and principles, it's hard to argue with. It's easy to say, treat everybody with respect, but it's awfully hard for people to think that way and to act that way. So I do think it's important. I think there's a lot of value in the organization. It makes a better organization, better decision-making, and a better service to our customers. And I do think the board has a key role in making that a priority and continue to emphasize that expectations and, providing the necessary, direction and resources to make it happen. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Last question. At times, board members disagree with staff recommendations. We disagree with each other. We have different views about how to address issues raised by the union or the public. Would you see yourself dealing with those situations?
I think, well, I guess, part of the job, and I think hopefully it happens more often than not, is to question, right? I think that's your job, is to ask questions, to share opinions, share perspectives, and bring up, so we just talked about, diversity is different perspectives of the issue. I think it's real important to be, clear, to not be afraid to raise the questions, to, maybe provide different perspectives than maybe others have. And a lot of times by doing that, one, you can either, allow people to see things from differently than they see it, and that might move them. Or two, to be open to listen to the other side. This is also, by sharing my view and my reasoning, it's easy for people to say, well, have you thought about this? Or have you considered these other factors? And then allows me to then change my perception of the issue and make better decisions. Obviously, you don't always agree, like you said. But I do think that it's important that the board does speak with one voice. Whatever the decision is, that's the decision of this board as a whole. Together, you're the board. Individually, your board members. So it's important to represent the agency, represent the interests, policies of the board and of the organization. Regardless of the discussions, I think, debate is good. Sharing opinions is good. Ultimately, you want to do what's best for the organization, for the customers, for our community. And that's really, I think, what we're all trying to do. And we might have different ideas on what's the best way to get there. But at the end of the day, we really need to speak with one voice and support each other going forward to make whatever decisions, as positive as we can.
Are there any clarifying questions from the board on any of the answers that we've received?
I think he has his closing statement.
Do the closing first, or I do have a clarifying question, I can do it more after.
Why don't we start that now, just since I've asked? And if there's any additional.
I have a
Doors open
clarifying
that
question
after.
too,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so, Maya, straightforward, I was looking through your resume, wanted to clarify whether you have had the opportunity to serve on a board of directors, a governing board with an organization, or?
Spent 8 years for the city of Campbell on their Civic Improvement Commission. So that's the closest as far as a, elected position. That was a, council-appointed appointment, and I served 2 terms on that.
Was that an advisory board essentially, or did you have?
Yeah, it was an advisory, commission to the board. We handled community projects, grant money. We distributed grant funds that the city had to nonprofit organizations, sponsored civic events, that type of thing.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
My clarifying question is, are you currently still at ACWD or retired, or, I mean, what's your status?
Currently a full-time employee for 3 more weeks.
Okay, so you are
After
retiring at that point?
April 26th, I'd be all yours. Yeah. So I'll be retiring on April 26th is my last day of
Okay,
work.
thank you.
I have a clarifying question too. Yeah, congratulations on your upcoming retirement.
Thank you.
I was just wondering about your experience with recycling water. I don't know if you know about our project with Derwa. And so I just, you have so much experience. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about Derwa and our recycling initiatives.
Yeah, and I think, again, I worked for Zone 7 and worked closely with DSRSD, so I'm familiar with that project. Also at Valley Water, obviously, they have their purified water program down there. So, yes, I'm familiar with it. I've worked on it. I think recycling, it's a challenge when you talk about purple pipe projects. I think, the future, I think, is going more towards more direct eventually. But I think, we have to make use of all the resources we have. So I think any of those projects are valuable. I don't know the relationships, as far as specific to Derwa, I'm sorry, ins and outs of it, but yes, I'm
Right.
familiar with it.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so, having had those opportunities for clarifying questions, we might have another one after your closing remarks, but I would invite you to use the remaining balance of your time for closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Well, again, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. Again, my career has been spent in water. That's just the, passion I have, providing that, that service to our community. I think it's, like I said, there's a lot to it. I think I bring a lot of value and understanding of issues, whether they're technical, regional, statewide perspectives, long-term planning. So I hope I can provide value. That's really, my interest is helping, bring some value to an organization, hopefully being able to contribute in a productive way. I know, I'm not the political side, I'm more the water side. My focus is really providing service to customers, doing it the best way we can. Selfish, I'm very thankful for the water quality that East Bay MUD has. I have a definite interest in maintaining that water quality, maintaining the reliability of service to our communities. And I hope to have an opportunity to do that and help the community that, again, I live in and like to continue serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arends,
Get
for
back
your
a minute.
participation, and you are welcome to remain in the boardroom, or staff can escort you to the training room.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Risha, how many people there online? Just curious.
35.
How many?
30. There are 30 people in the audience. Combination of staff.
Oh, there it is. I didn't see it at the bottom of the screen for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, James Cervantes, and thank you for your interest in serving on the EBMUD Board of Directors representing Ward 2. You will have 15 minutes for your interview, including your opening and closing remarks. Each board member will ask an interview question. So after those 6 questions, your allotted time does not include potential follow-up questions. We will have a clock running that will start shortly after we begin, and I encourage you to reserve at least a minute or it may be longer for your closing remarks. So if you have additional letters of support or recommendation, please also provide those to the secretary. So do you have any questions before we get started?
No, I don't think so. Just plunge in when everyone's ready.
Okay, then the secretary will start a timer and let you know when to begin your opening remarks.
Great, thank you very much. Ready? Thank you. Members of the board, thank you very much for the opportunity to interview for the Ward 2 position. As I noted in my application letter, I'm applying to the board based out of a lifelong interest in public policy, infrastructure, finance, and a sense of community service. So I wrapped up my 34-year career in public finance 4 years ago, where I worked with 500 bond issues for public agencies all through California. My career was solely in California. And I spent a good part of my career working with water and wastewater enterprise operations, participating in CASA and AQUA. And I've always been impressed by the work of California special districts. I had an engineering colleague who had a Special District Board Management Institute. I would sometimes do lectures for his group to talk about finance and what special district could finance projects. And I'll note that as one of a handful of AAA rated operations in this space, East Bay MUD is a premier organization in this field. So since my retirement, I focused on my lifelong interests, which really relate around community service. I called myself a professional community volunteer at some points. I'm active on my local Rotary Club, my parish finance council. I've done get out the work work with the Lime Ridge Democratic Club, and I've been active on nonprofit, city, county, and a state board as part of my post-retirement career, if you will. And I approached the prospect of service on the East Bay MUD Board in a similar light, serving a broader community and applying a skill set that I built up over my career in investment banking, which I think could be useful here. So my work would be to support the work of the district and the board. Beyond my experience in finance, in municipal finance in particular, I have many years of experience working on boards, have a sense of how a board operates. My take on that is to do it collegially and respectfully. And as a new board member, would have to get up the curve so I can ask thoughtful, intelligent questions and provide my best judgment to the whole organization. So with that, I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Cervantes. I'll ask the first question. Describe your experience dealing with local issues affecting Ward 2 in the East Bay. Who were some of the people or groups you worked with on these issues?
So I'll start off. I'm very familiar with Lafayette. I have some exposure with the balance of Ward 2. With Lafayette, it's primarily through service on the city's General Plan Advisory Committee, which I chaired for a period. With the balance, it's on service on the Measure X Community Advisory Board for Contra Costa County. So with respect to Lafayette and the General Plan Advisory Committee, we were tasked to do a couple of things, one of which was to update the city's mission statement, which was 54 years old and went back to 1968. And that came out of a question that I raised, which is, does this reflect what this community is now? And that was kind of a long and somewhat contentious process because you're talking about identity of a community. I was chair of the General Plan Advisory Committee during the housing update process. Housing is a big topic in our community. The state has a mandate for a whole lot of more units. And a lot of people had difficulties in digesting that. So that was part of the work I was involved with. So I worked closely with mayors Kendall, Geringer, and Dury during this process as they rotated in and out. I also worked very closely with City Manager Cervantes and other key staff of the city, and engaged extensively with the Chamber of Commerce and other local citizen organizations on an ongoing basis. And separately, on a pro bono basis, really, I worked with now Mayor Dawson and Vice Mayor Kwok as we were talking through how special tax financing might apply to a housing project in Lafayette. And away from all that, I spent a fair amount of time with Vice Mayor Kwok looking at options to fund the city's infrastructure needs. So with respect to the Measure X Community Advisory Board, which is my exposure to the balance of the ward, I was appointed by Supervisor Anderson as one of her 2 appointees on a countywide board. So I stayed in regular contact with her and her staff. And I'll note that Supervisorial District 2 substantially overlaps Ward 2. And I also worked a lot with our other representative who ran a nonprofit in San Ramon. So on the Measure X Committee, I want to highlight 2 things. One is I was very involved with the effort to support the funding for the Miles Hall Crisis Center and the county's A3 initiative, which is the Anyone, Anywhere, at Any Time in Contra Costa, which came out of a tragedy in Walnut Creek where a young African-American man with mental health issues, when the 911 call came through and the police showed up, they shot him. So I think everyone in the county realized we've got to do this better. We can't just have the police show up as the first responders in some of these cases. We need counselors. We need people who can intervene in instances like that. And that was the genesis of the A3 program, the funding of which was going to come out, a lot of it from Measure X. So I was a de facto liaison with a coalition of city managers who were involved in this. Spent a lot of time with the Lafayette city manager as my point person and sort of helping them gear up for the presentation they made to the advisory board. And that program got funding. Separately from that, I also spent a fair amount of time with some of the housing groups, Eden Housing in particular, to set up the first housing trust for Contra Costa County as a way to fund infrastructure, affordable housing in the county. So sort of a range, ranging from, again, working with supervisor, some of the other players in the county, got a crash course in what the county does, and on those 2 programs involved with other groups to sort of further those 2 programs.
What key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience in any of these areas? Infrastructure investment, long-term planning, financial sustainability, including affordability and rates, water supply, including water conservation and recycling, drinking water quality, workforce development and planning, or climate change and environmental protection. So what key issues facing EBMUD most interest you, and tell us about your experience?
Thank you. My top issue would be centered on infrastructure. And I mean, it's obviously a significant issue for the district. The water CIP spells out a $2.5 billion program over 5 years. On the wastewater side, it's about $335 million over the same period. And that's just the 5 years. I looked at the CIP presentation. There are projects that go out beyond that. So clearly, if you look out long-term, it's in the multiples of billions, I would think. And I'll say that I spent half my life working on infrastructure funding for California agencies. So I worked with about 100 water wastewater bond issues. So I would be working with staff and sometimes board members, trying to figure out how do you get a capital plan accomplished, particularly if you need rate increases. And so we would sometimes model what kind of revenue increases would be needed to phase in a capital program that might be daunting for a given agency. And I think the mantra to me was slow and steady wins the race. We would try to do things in a way where you had gradual increases and avoid the 15 to 20% one-time increase that gets you a really nasty Prop 218 hearing. And I sat in on some of those for clients, and that's not a place you want to be at. So some of the projects I worked on involved, groundwater storage, acquiring sources of water. I worked on the water company acquisition by a wholesaler and groundwater desalter projects. So kind of a real range of projects, which I thought were just fascinating and part of what special districts do. And I think I'll note that, I looked at the CIP, and it's obviously very thoughtful and programmed out. Issues like climate mitigation could be part of that. Resiliency is the other key feature, especially with respect to, anticipating an earthquake. And I can touch on that later. But I'd say that my interest really centers around infrastructure, because that's the world I dealt with before. I just find it sort of fascinating, and I'd bring a finance perspective to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And welcome, and thank you for putting in your application for this. So my question is, what do you view as the role of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors, including working with internal and external parties of interest?
Yeah, I thought about that, and I think there's like 4 topics there. And one is, the byword I had when I was chairing the General Plan Advisory Committee was to listen to everyone. If someone called me, I would answer them, and I would engage in a conversation. And whether it was a housing element or the mission statement, because I felt it was really important to give people, individuals or groups, a fair hearing and to understand their perspective. And I would think that would be a way I would approach things, were I on this board. The other thing, second point I'd say is that I would approach internal and external parties with a bit of humility. I'll acknowledge I'm not the expert on all these things. I've looked at some of the materials relating to the district, and it's frankly daunting. I've got a background that I think is useful, but there's a lot I can learn from others. So I kind of take this really from a sense of humility.
Hey, bud.
The third point I'd make, is there a question? Okay, thank you. The third point I'd make is that I would really make a major effort to catch up with staff on the work that's been done to date on the CIP and operational plans. I mean, I've read through materials, I looked at the official statements, I went through the capital plan, I went through the audit, but there's a lot there. And I'd want to get up to speed on that, and that would be a real priority for me, so I could be more conversant with the issues. And last thing, and maybe as importantly, reaching out to the constituencies in Ward 2. I'm very familiar with the Lafayette landscape, but there's other parts of the district I am less familiar with. I know them through the Measure X work I did. I know the county supervisor Anderson and her staff, but whether it's city managers, city councils, other elected officials, Rotary clubs, to me, a real key part of what I want to do is to reach out to them in areas outside of Lafayette so they're better acquainted with what the district is doing. Because I think it's important for communities to understand the work of East Bay MUD and why it's a good thing that their roads are being torn up. So it's like part of it is just sort of walking them through that, because there's a reason for it and it's all to the good. So that would be the way I would approach those topics.
Good evening, Mr. Cervantes. What do you see as the most significant challenges facing East Bay MUD, and how would you approach these challenges as a board member?
Thank you. I think I have 3 topics there: system resiliency, water supply, and demographics. And with regard to resiliency, it's really addressing the known unknown, which is a major earthquake. And I'll note when I read through the water official statement, which was issued last month, it highlighted the 6 months of local storage, which is very respectable. But that if there were a major event that disrupted the raw water supply through the Delta, the official statement also notes it might take a year to fix that. So there's a risk there. And maybe even more so perhaps, the official statement noted if there were a major earthquake on the Hayward Fault that took out the Claremont Tunnel, the western portion of the district would require severe water rationing to endure. So resiliency in terms of the pipelines and storage are critical. And I noted in the CIP, a lot of that work relates to that. But I think that's the thing that haunts me, because we don't know when it'll happen, but it will. It'll have major effects. I think the district's going to good job in preparing for that, but to me, that would be a real focus. The second obvious topic would be water supply. And as sort of an observer of the water scene in my career, I know that the district is extensively involved in all of this with Bay Delta, groundwater storage, working with other agencies. I mean, East Bay MUD has been front and center on this for years. But I'll also note that the water official statement talked about the State Water Resources Control Board staff report, which to me would have some really troubling implications if some of that plays through. So I think understanding that better and the risks that represent would be really important. Finally, I'll say that just in my career, I saw the reach of East Bay MUD. Years ago, I worked with the Amateur Water Agency. They were converting their open trench water supply to pipes. They funded bonds for that, but East Bay MUD was in the picture as well, supporting that effort, helping to fund it. So I thought that was really creative, that you would think out of the box to do that kind of work with another district. My third thing would be demographics, and really it's an aging workforce and the implications of that. The boomers are retiring. I'm one of them. And so finding good, young, talented people to take those spots is really critical. I think that's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity for a more diverse workplace, but it's critical to get those good, young, talented people in as you lose older, talented people who are retiring. And I'll also say that making sure the pension system is adequately funded is also important to me, to make sure that the district can make good on the promises made to employees so that when they retire, the money's there for them. And your funding ratio is sort of in the mid 70% range. Maybe a thought would be, is there a target threshold, maybe somewhat higher, to work towards over time to sort of provide greater resiliency on the pension front? To me, that's another one where slow and steady wins the race. But I would think that sort of addressing these demographic issues are also pretty important too, in addition to the system resiliency and the water supply issues. So, thank you.
Director Katz, I don't know if you can see the timer. We are at 58 seconds.
Oh.
Your time is on the screen.
Am I running out of time?
You're at 58 seconds, and we
Okay.
have 2 more questions.
Oops.
And closing remarks.
My bad. Thank you. Appreciate that.
What we might do for your convenience is to ask the questions and then give you the opportunity to address the remaining questions and your closing remarks in the same
Thank you.
Response.
Appreciate that. I'll be more mindful of that clock up there. Thanks.
Okay. So board members remain with questions remaining, please ask the question and we will have a consolidated response.
Would you please describe your views on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI efforts in the workplace, in the broader community as well? And tell me, in that broader community that we serve as well, how you would promote DEI for East Bay MUD.
And then my question, let's see how well you parlay all of these
I know,
different
it's gonna be a good
questions
challenge.
together. At times, board members disagree with staff recommendations with each other, and or on how to address issues raised by the union or the public. How would you manage or deal with those situations?
Thank you. First, with respect to DEI, I would say that I think DEI is a key to building a stronger organization, especially as you deal with a younger workforce. And I would say from my family's history, DEI is my family story. My father, earning his wings in World War II, is one of a handful of Mexican-American pilots. I think it helped me get into Harvard when I was applying for, it was affirmative action. I've seen in my work life, our best people, our best banker was an African-American woman. So having a mix of people is really pretty critical. So that's, I'll cut that one there. The second one is 3 words: respect, listening, and humility. Respecting others, other viewpoints, listening, trying to understand where someone else is coming from, and humility in terms of just, I realize that there's a lot of more there's more I don't know than I do know. And I would apply those, I think, as a board member here. I have 8 seconds. Oh. So my wrap up?
Yes, yeah, and we we'll pause there just to see if we have any clarifying questions on what's been said so far.
I have a quick one. I know that you said that you would be reaching out to other parts of the district, and by that, I think you probably mean Danville, San Ramon.
Yes.
Diablo, Blackhawk. So how would you go about reaching out?
I
Don't want anyone to forget, there's an election coming up.
Oh, I know. I think anyone you appoint is going to be a mad sprint to November. And I think probably very shortly after anyone gets the appointment, they're going to be reaching out. I would start, I'd say there are cities where you've got city managers and councils. I'd really want to get in front of them. I want to introduce myself to them, make sure they know I'm the successor of John Coleman, and that I'm available, and try to sort of talk through with them what their issues are. I think that'd be my first priority. Dealing with Supervisor Anderson would be probably my second priority. I already know her. And then there's the other community organizations that I think would want to know who their rep is now. So that would take some time as well, because you have to schedule that, but that would be a third thing.
That's what you do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And before we allow you just some time for closing remarks, we had a few seconds of things happening, so please take an additional 15 seconds in addition to the 5 that are left, and just wrap up in about 20 seconds.
So this is like stoppage time in the World Cup then?
Right.
Thank you. So three points. First, I'm very interested in this position. The work of the district addresses infrastructure needs that I think are critical to our region, are consistent with the work I've done, and I think that's important. The second is I have an experience in public finance from a career in that I think could be a net plus for the board and for the district. It would be additive to what you're doing. It's sort of theory that having a balanced portfolio is good in finance. I would be something that adds to the portfolio you already have of talent. And the third thing is, and I think this goes without saying, is that I would approach this work on the board with honesty and integrity, do my best to be prepared, do my best to serve the people, the communities of Ward 2. But I think that's important to stress that that's the way I would approach the work. And with that, I thank you for your time. I appreciate the extra 15 seconds too.
Thank you, Mr. Cervantes, for your interest and for your participation. You're welcome to remain in the boardroom, or staff can escort you to the training room.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
We may need a bio break, but let's just see if members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda item 14. That is this item of the appointment for the vacancy to Ward 2. Then please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. And so, Madam Secretary, do you have, how many speakers are online and are requesting to speak on Zoom?
I have 2 hands at the moment.
Okay. I have 1 speaker card in the room. Are there any other speakers in the room besides the 1 card I have in the room? So if it's the pleasure of the board, we could proceed with the bio break now, or take the 3 speakers that we have at 3 minutes. So does it seem
So
like
it's
we
10
can?
minutes, basically.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
okay
let's
with
go ahead.
taking the speakers.
Okay.
Yeah, let's take the speakers.
Okay, yeah, and it's anticipated that we'll take a break before deliberations.
Yes.
Unless we want to keep powering through, but I think we can decide how we feel in about 10 minutes.
I
So-
have 3 hands online for public comment.
3
Just
hands,
Yeah,
okay.
hands will probably start,
Okay.
keep popping up, so just.
That is what happens. So I will take the speaker in the room first, John Joya. That is a good point. I do think it's important that everybody hear the public's participation. So if we can get Director Patterson back shortly, then we'll do that. So we will take a 1-minute stretch break.
That was efficient.
Yeah, I can still get my standing goal.
You still get your what? Oh. What's your standing goal? Is it a certain amount of time, or is it steps?
Stand for a minute. But It only registers
Stand for a minute every day?
every hour.
Oh, every hour. Is that replacing the 250 steps you're supposed to do? Or
No,
is that-
that's another circle.
Can you stand and walk at the same time? Okay.
This is our longest board meeting, I think.
Maybe not ever.
Well, yeah, if we go reel to reel and we compare it to WSMP.
Yeah, there were some long board meetings back in,
Back in the old.
I mean, I was here in a meeting where there was 100 people in the room on something. I don't actually remember what it was. And it was, might have been before Doug even became a board.
Yeah, I don't know, because there's not many evening.
No, evenings, no, but I think, you know, we took the 2-hour break. We're gonna start losing people. Oh, there's Bill, okay.
Bill is back.
Tell Doug to come back in.
Okay. We're gonna have the real break in a minute, so. We're back in session. All directors are present. And we will begin with public comment in the room. Supervisor John Joya.
Great.
Supervisor Joya, I'm gonna just set your timer so that you can see it
I'm setting
on
mine at
screen.
3 minutes as well, right?
All right, and
Knows the drill.
Yes.
we're ready.
Great. Good afternoon, President McIntosh. I'm a proud resident of the President's Ward, and of course to all of you. And I respect all of your great work. Having served on this board for 10 years, I know the challenges you face, and I know how hard all of you work. And I've had the honor, since I got off the EBMUD Board in 1999, to represent West Contra Costa County on the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors. And you have 5 well-qualified applicants, so you have a tough job. And I just wanted to say, like all of you, I didn't come on this board as a water expert. I had some knowledge of water, but I came on this board with strong values of representing the community, working with the staff, working with all of you, and working with the public. And I know you are looking for somebody strong. And so I wanted to offer my observations on one of your candidates who I've had the honor of working with for about 20 years, and that's Luz Gómez. She worked for our Contra Costa Health Department. She worked in my office for about 10 years. She worked at the Air District and back at the Health Department. And I had a chance to work with her in my office, in the Health Department, and on the Air District. And I just want to say this. I think what most impressed me is she listens to community. She respects and collaborates with her colleagues, seeks out shared vision and goals. She respects and works with staff. She has humility, but she will be a strong advocate for values of fiscal prudence, equity, environmental stewardship, and responsibility. She worked in my office with Public Works on infrastructure issues. She worked with community on many issues, whether they be county finance, environmental issues, infrastructure issues, and she was always well-respected and well-liked. And I think what really, for me, set her apart was her willingness to really care about people and represent those values and to ensure that everybody's voice is heard. And yet, we'll work with the staff, we'll work with all of you, and we'll make sure that this district also is well represented in regional agencies. She's worked with many elected officials. She was selected by broad stakeholders of the Contra Costa Sustainability Commission to be their chair, because it is broad stakeholders, from labor to environment to business on that commission. She has high ethical standards and integrity, and I think would represent this district and ultimately the public, because that's what it's about. That's what we're here for, and I just wanted to offer my thoughts on Luz. So with that, you have a tough job, and good luck, and always look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Supervisor Joya.
10 years, I didn't know you were on here that long. That's great, John. Hats off.
And I will also read out some instructions for all speakers who may be speaking with us for the first time. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. And please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we will have you contact staff. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. Madam Secretary, please read the first name for public comment.
Kyle Levy. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes. Moment, we'll start now.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kyle Levy. I've been a resident of San Ramon for 25 years. I'm also a member of the California Water Environment Association, and I hold certification in the area of collection system maintenance. I'm speaking to you tonight in support of Bill Clarkson's application for East Bay MUD Director for Ward 2. Bill is a proven community leader at both the local and regional level, and I'm proud to call him a friend. For over 30 years, Bill Clarkson has been passionately committed to public service and has developed strong relationships with communities, stakeholders, and other leaders throughout much of the region that Ward 2 covers, and across many different policy areas, as he explained to you tonight. Bill has a demonstrated track record of fiscal responsibility and for helping to make San Ramon a regional leader in the area of recycled water. He has a proven commitment to encouraging community engagement and participation in public policy and helping to explain how things work and why and getting the public involved in that. And he's also very good at developing relationships between leaders and other organizations and regional partners. Most importantly, though, I think the thing to keep in mind is that Bill is fiercely passionate about strategically approaching infrastructure needs and planning from a very long-term perspective to help ensure not only that the needs of the communities of today are being met, but also planning for the communities that will exist in the future on a long-term basis. Ultimately, I'm not going to belabor the point too much. East Bay MUD as an organization and the people of Ward 2 in particular would be well served by your selection of Bill Clarkson for this position tonight. Thank you.
Okay. One moment. Next, we have Jean Kusnick.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am a 30-year resident of San Ramon, and I'm offering my support for former Mayor Bill Clarkson to fill this East Bay MUD Ward 2 position. Mr. Clarkson has demonstrated his leadership and collegiality in our city and community governance. San Ramon annually is deemed a top 5 city in our area. This is a tangible result of his good leadership and planning for our futures. The East Bay MUD Board will be very well served by his understanding of current issues as they have grown from past planning and governance. He thrives in being a collaborative leader and is outstanding in bringing in diverse and talented colleagues. Mr. Clarkson is exceedingly well respected in the Tri-Valley area. He will continue to represent our needs on the East Bay MUD Board. I support his selection to fill Mr. Coleman's seat and believe that he would be an outstanding member of your board. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
And that concludes the online public comment. I have no other hands.
Okay, last call for public comment. And see if no other public comment is presenting ourselves, then the board will now begin the deliberative process. We
We may choose to take a recess for, somewhere between 15 to 20, maybe 25 minutes. We may want to just begin since all the interviews and public comments are fresh in our mind. So that's really the pleasure of the board to see, how are we feeling? Are we ready to begin that deliberation? If we do deliberate, or if we do take a recess before deliberating because of the hour, and we are encouraged to have our, provision separately in our offices because, of course, we cannot deliberate outside of open session. What is the pleasure of the board in terms of jumping right into discussion or taking a recess?
My preference is to take a recess.
I agree.
I thought so. I just, everybody is here, and I wasn't seeing, I wasn't reading the room just from your faces. So let's. Why don't we take 20, 25? Yeah. Some we could go longer.
Do 6:30? Just 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. 6:30.
All right.
Andy, I guess the question is, so during this recess, are we eating dinner or are we just decompressing? I mean, what, in terms of time, do we have 20 minutes to eat dinner or do we have 20 minutes to decompress?
I think we should take the time that we need to do whatever our needs are. I think the board members here in the room are going to be eating dinner.
All right.
So is 20 minutes enough?
Okay.
I'm not seeing any disagreement, so I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable. This is pretty extraordinary amount of work for the day. So, all right, well, we'll take that recess until 6:30. If we are a minute or two behind, then so be it. But we'll see everybody back here at 6:30. And members of the public, you can find us back here at 6:30.
Don't move, Jay. Teo, can you please pause the recording?
I'm not gonna eat it.
Teo, can you please start the recording? And we're ready.
Board members, we are back in session. And we will now begin the deliberation process. So without, one approach to start is just to go from one side of the room to the next and ask for general comments about our feedback on the candidates with as much or as little detail as we would like to share, or we can go in a different order. So.
Well, we can talk about each candidate in order and, or, I don't know. I'm happy to go first if we want to do the, impressions.
All right, not seeing anybody else.
Somebody needs to kick it off.
Not seeing anybody else want to kick it off. Before I call on Director Young, I just want to say that we have had a really excellent round of presentations from 5 candidates who are all highly qualified, and I think any would be excellent additions to the board, but we only have 1 vacancy. So we do need to find the best fit for the appointment, and so with that, I'll reserve the remainder of my comments and call on Director Young.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with Andy. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect when we put the notice out, but having, 5 very well-qualified candidates in different ways for this position is, I think we can all feel good about who our next director from Ward 2 will be. The criteria that we decided, that is what I did is I, listened to the answers and wrote notes, but I kept in my sort of evaluation, the factors that the evaluation criteria of clear vision or interest in the role as a director on the East Bay Mud Board, commitment to protecting the environment and public health, experience serving or supporting the community we serve, which I interpret to being not just Ward 2, but the entire area that we serve, leadership experience and experience with or knowledge of water and wastewater issues. And again, I think all the candidates had that, but in my mind, I think that Luz Gómez, for me, has the combination of those attributes to the highest degree. Everybody else actually sort of tied at the next stage. Clearly, Bill Clarkson has many, many years of experience in elected leadership. What I didn't get a sense of, though, was why he'd want to be on our board. Certainly he's qualified, but I didn't get that strong. I had a question mark still about why, what the vision interest question. So I'll leave it there.
If,
Are we going in order?
We, I think
We
it's
don't
up
have
to,
to.
we don't have to go in order, we can on times.
So in some ways, it's easier to be first, like, out of the way.
Yeah, I will go next. I think if we, I do have other thoughts on the additional candidates, but I do want to concur with Director Young that Luz Gómez, I think, has a very high breadth of qualities that I think are very helpful for joining this board, having experience with different layers of government, working at the county, working at the Air District, engagement in public outreach, environmental sustainability. Those are, and involvement with the Contra Costa County Sustainability Commission. Those are all qualities that I think will be really strong for East Bay Mud, and that's why she stands out as a top candidate for me. I would be glad to respond, about some other candidates if they are coming up as high ranking for other directors, but I just wanted to express that agreement with Director Young.
Well, if nobody wants to talk, I don't know, Lisa? I'm gonna talk.
Go ahead, Bill. I'm trying to stuff my face.
I heard that. Basically, and I come from a different perspective when it comes to, representing community and the people and persons who have a real outgoing and even following by what I saw demonstrated, some of the calls that came in, some of the people who appeared to speak, but more importantly, the candidates themselves. In my opinion, there were two people that stood out. And I'm not different from where you are. I think Luz did a good job. She certainly, Ms. Gómez, was impressive and carried community. Then I think the mayor has certainly touched roots in his community. And that's kind of where we're coming from on the board. We don't need people to run the water part. We already got general manager and staff We need people with contact with community who can convey their wishes and knowledge and who can carry that piece. And so I throw those two names on the table.
So I'll go
Uh,
next.
Okay,
Lisa?
I'll go after you, Doug.
I think Bill helped me a little bit here, because it really did narrow down to the same two for me. And I, in the forced ranking here, I had the two top spots empty because it was between Luz and Bill. But as time went on, one of the things I found was that the technical aspects of some of the qualifications, and by all means, all five were very qualified. When I looked at the resumes earlier, I was going, oh, this is going to be tough tonight. But I think everybody interviewed well, but I do think that it came down to, as Bill said, community and roots in the community, because I certainly have found that to be really important when I'm making considerations and deliberating on things here. I'm thinking of people I've talked to in the community, presentations I've made, connections I have there to help. And it's much less the technical aspects of the job. And there's plenty to learn, and there's plenty to be able to deliberate on that are technical. But the staff are very helpful that way. And I think the balance of the board in terms of this, in terms of our role, is to be able to be that link to the community and to ask good questions about the technical aspects, especially things that we don't understand. It almost makes it kind of an interesting situation. Lisa, you made me think of myself earlier today when you were saying, speak to me like a kindergartner sometimes. And I really think that's helpful for the staff to have to explain at that level. And for us as board members, not to be fearful of asking questions that may seem fundamental or may seem basic, because that's the only way we're going to understand it and be able to convey that to the community. And so it's, I think, a challenging choice because both Bill and Luz have demonstrated roots in the communty. But I think in the end, I side a little bit with what Marguerite said, that the mayor hasn't done as much on water, hasn't shown the same passion for water, at least that I could see Luz demonstrating, and the work that she's done in various ways in the community. But I'll also say it's a tough choice there. But I would lean towards Luz Gómez.
I was overall impressed with the depth and breadth and knowledge of all five candidates, not necessarily in terms of water or wastewater, but connected in terms of leadership roles and having knowledge of the community and its inner workings. I know when I threw my hat in the ring to fulfill John Joya's term way back in the day, I didn't know a thing about water, literally nothing. But what I did do, I embarked on a fact-finding mission. I visited, I took weeks off at a time and visited all of our facilities, even upcountry facilities. I met with our general manager. I talked with every staff person who was willing to talk to me and teach me something. And it was so beneficial. So when I did actually get that appointment, I didn't feel like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I did, but I had some basic knowledge of the inner workings of EBMUD. And that was extremely helpful. So I actually agree with the prior board members. I think Luz was very impressive, and not because of her, well, partly because of her knowledge of water, but more so about her knowledge of community. Her knowledge of community is just amazing, and commitment to protecting the environment and public health. Leadership experience, experience serving or supporting the community. Those just touched me during her presentation. Bill was extremely, obviously impressive. All five were impressive, but I have to say it was Luz who had the clear vision or interest in the role as a director on the East Bay Mud Board. Those are my comments.
Okay, I just wanted to, I'm so glad that I got an opportunity to hear everyone first. You know, I am the newest person on the board, and so it was helpful for me to hear how people are thinking about this. And what I would say first is that obviously a very impressive candidate pool. I would be honored to serve with any one of you, honestly. And just so you know, you'll have to share an office with me if you get selected, so you can back out.
Without any windows.
And it doesn't have windows, right? And you have to clean the office if you're the last person to move in. But I will say this. I do agree with everyone on the board as far as Mayor Clarkson and Luz Gómez, and that it was so interesting to listen to all the candidates. And I felt like I was listening to staff most of the time. And it really kind of brought forward, like, okay, so what really would be distinctive about this person? I mean, what could they bring that that we don't already have? And that is really the ties to the community and being already integrated in the community. And General Counsel said, I can say this out loud, which, which is, let's not forget, we have an election coming up. And so to me, I guess I think about that because I represent part of San Ramon, but I really, I think the connection, and Bill talks about when he was appointed, Lisa talks about when she was appointed, but I don't think that the, election was so close in those particular circumstances. And so I really am just like, I have to say that I do disagree about Mayor Clarkson. I think that in terms of water, he really did demonstrate that he knew about water. I think he was probably the person who spoke the most about DERWA and knew the most about DERWA. And I'm just being mindful that this is just not an East Bay Mud Board position, that this is also a DERWA position. And he is the one with the most extensive experience in DERWA. And when it comes to DEI, which is really a huge value for East Bay Mud, I felt that he was the one who came forward with the most concrete examples of what he's done. I think he was able to demonstrate in 2 or 3 different ways how, bringing the community together, bringing different ethnicities together, and being able to help move the community forward in terms of the diverse Rotary Club, in terms of the diverse DEI committee with the city. So and I don't think that most of us had a chance to look through Mayor Clarkson's recommendations. There were like 25 recommendations from all parts of Ward 2. And I think that's really important, is just to be able to show widespread support from the ward for their candidate. So I do agree that it really does come down to community support. I'm 100% there. Like I said, Mayor Clarkson and Luz, they're both from San Ramon. I think they're both awesome, so that's where I'm at.
Can we create another board spot? Guess not.
Well, there is an election in November.
And, you know, we are, while you know, incumbents do tend to remain on the board, you know, after election, you know, we may see a situation where we do see a contested election, you know, against the appointed incumbent. And I think if the pool does include another member of the pool who is not appointed, then I think we will still have a qualified contest and look forward to a qualified representative in either case. I also had an impression of Mayor Clarkson that you know, definitely reinforced the understanding that he has strong roots in his city, and I think that is definitely notable. I also am really glad to have seen Ms. Lauritzen, you know, come and present, who, you know, I feel like her agency is a sister agency and one where we have a lot to share and learn about the way we're doing wastewater and net, you know, calculating for, you know, net zero goals. And also was, you know, glad to see the perspectives from Mr. Cervantes and the high qualifications from Mr. Arends. Really, I'm very glad to have had this fortune to have all these choices here. So those are just things I thought that deserved to be said, you know, but and people who I thought deserved additional mentions too. Are there further comments, or are we ready to entertain a motion?
And before you entertain the motion.
Did you say who you're?
My first choice in this process is Luz Gómez.
And before you entertain the motion, Clifford has asked me to kind of explain the effects of your vote. Under the MUD Act, the board member, whoever you appoint, will commence their duties immediately upon appointment. And then within 14 days of appointment, they'll take the oath of office. But they will be, as of this evening, a board member. So just wanted to let you all know that.
See what you talking during the day.
Hold on. I needed that.
Well, I mean, I can count. And I do, you know, Mayor Clarkson clearly has a tremendous amount of, you know, support in the valley, and I'm sure that he, you know, will continue to do amazing things in his community. But I will forward the nomination of Luz Gómez to be our appointed member in Ward 2.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Young and seconded by President McIntosh to nominate and appoint Luz Gómez to be appointed to serve as the director representing EBMUD Ward 2 until the general election on November 5th, 2024. So having there been a motion duly moved and seconded, we will have a roll call vote as we have a teleconference meeting today. And just to identify the rule, if there is a tie, the board must vote until the tie is broken. And the appointee must be approved by a majority of the board. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
No, we need to do the roll call vote.
Excuse me, roll call vote.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Linney?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President McIntosh?
Yes.
Congratulations, Luz Gómez, on being appointed to serve as the director. Representing Ward 2. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank each candidate participating in this process. And Ms. Gómez, Director Gómez, would you like to address the board?
I am so honored and humbled by you placing your trust in me to carry forth the incredible mission of the Air District and to sit by your side to help make the ambitious goals that the district has set for itself happen for the next 100 years, to help usher in the next 100 years. And I'm deeply grateful. I really, really look forward to getting to know you all better and to serving by your side. And thank you, President McIntosh, for being here remotely and for all of your support and belief that this person who has had a lifetime of community service can make a difference. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do any board members have any comments?
I was going to suggest to Luz, you do have to appoint 3 standby officers as part of your duties as a board member, and most of us search high and low to find people that are willing to do that, but you might just have some people in the room.
I second that. While we hope very much, that we don't have an emergency that causes anyone to take our roles in a standby process. We did hear discussion of an earthquake, and there's a variety of emergencies that could cause that. But more importantly, I think involving the highly qualified community members in our standby officer program is meaningful, and we certainly heard those voices today. But I'm really excited to be working with you going forward throughout the year, and congratulations. Any other comments?
No, congratulations.
Okay, then, Director Patterson.
In closing out today, it's important to acknowledge that every person counts. And all of you who participated in this endeavor today are an asset that we can hold in our portfolio at EBMUD because you are part of us. I'd just like to say it's a little bit different when I came on the board because, like Lisa, the community brought me here. I didn't come. They brought me here. The unions, everybody lined up. There was nobody to represent the community that they had approved of other than me. And so before I came, I asked what the problems were at EBMUD, because I was happy to be home with my wife on my second retirement. And I want to just say what an important thing it was when they told me what the problems were. The problems weren't with the water. The problems was maintaining what we had and guaranteeing that our people would be served and have an adequate supply for the future, and that the capital projects that were tied down in government lore were where they needed the help. They were blocked in Sacramento, and they were blocked by other agencies, and they were blocked in Washington. I went on the safari to those places because I knew all the people there. And I was able to use my skill with those people to get the people who needed to move things moved, including the President of the United States. And so that's what I brought in terms of strength to the district. I learned so much about water, wastewater, everything, conservation. I learned those things, but the general manager took me to school on a special excursion before I was appointed and convinced me. The finances were in order. We were not in trouble in any of those quarters. But the thing they needed most was to be able to move our agenda. That's what Freeport emerged from. I just want to say, everybody has something that they can contribute. Even though you leave here, some of you today, and you didn't get the appointment, just remember, you had an experience and you have a friend in East Bay Mud. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
If there are no further comments, then the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will be held on Tuesday, April 23rd at 1:15 PM. This meeting is now adjourned.